line 28, after the word relatives, insert a comma and the phrase without unnecessary delay in accordance with this act and other applicable laws, rules, and regulations. The amended sentence would now read as follows. In case of a deceased patient, the cadaver shall be immediately released to the surviving relatives without unnecessary delay in accordance with this act and other applicable laws, rules, and regulations. Sinisigurado po nito na kapag Muslim po ang yumao, ang pag-release immediately ng cadaver ay nanganguluhugan po ng 24 hours ayon sa RA 12160 o Philippine Islamic Burial Act. I so move, Mr.
What
President.
does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President. And for the record, kaya ko po buong loob na tinatanggap itong amendment ng good gentleman mula sa Nueva Ecija at BARM ay dahil itong clean bill expressly harmonizes these matters with existing law. Kasama na nga po yung special law natin na RA 12160 tungkol sa Muslim cadavers. Cadaver release is required immediately and without unnecessary delay in accordance with this act and other applicable laws, including special laws governing prompt release of cadavers for religious or burial purposes. So muli po, Mr. President, I accept.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
Maraming salamat po.
Yung ano.
Mr. President, point of order.
Yes, Senator Raffy. What's the pleasure of Senator Raffy Tulfo?
Mr. President, in the past few weeks, I have coordinated with the Office of the Majority Leader regarding the membership of the committees I hold as chairman. In fairness to the Majority Leader's office, they have extended all efforts to formalize the election of the members of the Committee on Public Services and Migrant Workers. What disturbs me is that it is the inaction of the minority floor leader to confirm these memberships that holds important LEDAC bills hostage, such as the Department of Water, crucial franchise bills, and the OFW reintegration bills. To my colleagues in the minority, maraming salamat po for your confirming your intent to join my committee. But to the minority leader, my good friend, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, it is time that we cooperate so that we may get back to legislating. If you have time to go on FB Live, maybe you have time to confirm or give the go signal to your minority members. Kasi Mr. President, pabalik-balik na po yung staff ko sa office ni Senator Peter Alan Cayetano para kumuha daw ng go signal nang sa gayon yung kanyang mga members ay ma-elect na sa committee ko. And all of them were saying we're more than happy and willing to sign, pero ayaw ni Senator Cayetano, Alan Cayetano. I don't know anong dahilan niya, bakit niya hostage yung pagiging members ng kanyang mga kasamahan sa committee ko. Hostage niya po yung mga LEDAC bills sa kanyang pagtanggi na bigyan ng go signal ang kanyang mga kasamahan sa minority para pumirma. Mr. President, sana makarating to kay Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. Kanina sana kausapin ko po siya, kaso wala po siya dito ngayon. Therefore, I have no choice para dalhin to sa floor. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Senator Raffy, thank you for that reminder. In fact, we have 32 committees that have yet to be fully convened. Kulang pa ho tayo ng mga members. And we would like to request later on, me and the majority leader would coordinate and talk to our minority leader to provide us with a list of members to fully complete the 32 committees. We recognize Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President. Actually, I don't really have to stand anymore because the Senate President already responded in the manner that I believe is becoming of the Senate. Senator Tulfo, madali niyo naman akong tanungin, alam niyo naman kapatid ko si Alan, kung gusto niyo may iparating. Huwag na ho kayo magdrama ng mga pa-hostage. Hindi ho tayo ganito dito. And I certainly hope that you don't set a precedent kasi I don't know the Senate President to be that way. I don't know the Majority Floor Leader to be that way. He happens to be seated beside the former Senate President. The Minority Floor Leader doesn't happen to be here. I can talk to him. Pag in-ignore niya kayo and the next day, wala pa rin, then sige, sabihin niyo yung gusto niyo. Pero huwag naman sanang ganun. Wala ko akong naalalang ganun magsalita dito sa Senate for the 19 years that I've been a senator. Yun lang naman po. Thank you, Mr. Senate President.
What's the pleasure of Senator Raffy Tulfo?
Sandali, Mr. President, ubusin ko muna yung tawa ko. Never po ako nagdrama dito. Simula nung ako'y maging senador, never ever po ako nagdrama rito. Halugugin niyo po yung mga post sa social media. Never niyo ako nakita nagdrama. O ginamit to para mag-grandstanding. Alam niyo po yan. Alam na lahat ng tao rito. Sino ang nagdadrama? Tumingin muna kayo sa salamin bago kayo magsalita. Salamat po.
Pareho naman pong majority and minority gusto ng mag-focus sa trabaho.
Yeah.
At kanina ho, natapos na ho natin yung anti-hospital detention na napakaganda po yung debate at pag-amenda. At naniniwala po ako na mabubuon rin natin itong mga committees natin sa pamamagitan ng coordination between yours truly and the majority leader.
Yeah, Mr. President, we'll just both reach out to our dear friend,
Yes.
the Minority Floor Leader. He hasn't been feeling well, so let's give him.
We'll reach out to him.
We'll reach out to him, and by tomorrow we can settle this issue and elect already the members of the minority.
Correct.
But at least I can guarantee and say that Senator Amy is on all those committees as being the Minority Floor Leader. She's in all those committees. We just have to elect the other members. Opo. So don't worry, Mr. President. We'll reach out to our dear Minority Floor Leader, and I'm sure by tomorrow we can settle this all, and we'll start electing members to be able to sign the committee reports.
Yeah,
We
because-
guarantee all our members, both the majority and the
Yes,
minority.
because we cannot sign the committee reports without completing the committee memberships, as well as the BICAM and the ratification without completing the membership. So it's really important that we should complete that
Yes.
as soon as possible.
Absolutely, Mr. President. And
Amendment is approved.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, sa ating distinguished sponsor, especially po sa huling ipinropose natin sapagkat yung inclusion of this IRR provision is intended only to ensure lang po, Mr. President, the timely and faithful implementation of this act. Maraming salamat po muli, Ginoong Pangulo. Maraming salamat, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. President, at sa good gentleman mula sa Bulacan. For the record also, Mr. President, I gladly accepted that amendment because one of the amendments introduced through this bill is precisely grievance and discharge protocols, requiring DOH to establish those grievance and redress mechanisms and requiring hospitals to adopt standard discharge protocols. Before we proceed, Mr.
Yes.
President, I apologize. I have an anterior amendment still on page 6 but on line 15 coming from the Senate
What is the
President.
pleasure
Yes,
of
Mr.
Senator
President.
Erwin Tulfo?
Raffy.
Sorry. Birthday kasi ni Senator Erwin kaya nasa
Okay
isip
lang,
ko
Mr.
parati.
President.
Senator Raffy Tulfo.
At least kapatid ko, pag ibang tao magagalit ako. Anyway.
Paborito niyo si Erwin eh.
Yeah, actually, Mr. President, this is not an amendment, rather a point of inquiry, if you allow me.
On the same
Certainly, Mr.
on
President.
the same topic, on the same
Yeah, yes,
amendment.
Mr. President, actually, ewan ko, parang lumundag na ata, may problema dito yung mga taga-legis ko, kaya hinabol ko lang dito. Kasi I received a lot of complaints
Yeah.
for the past several years sa programa ko Wanted sa radyo about patients not having enough money to pay for the bill. That's why they're being held as hostage, even yung mga bangkay nila, ng mga relatives. Kaya lumalapit po sa akin. So I was just wondering, Mr. President, under Section 2 on promissory notes, gusto ko lang clarify, yung mga patient na hindi naman mahirap, hindi sila considered as indigent, right? Now, pero lubog naman sila sa utang. I mean, they're not indigent, maganda yung kanilang trabaho, pero minalas sila at nabenta nila mga ari-arian nila at sila ay lubog na sa mga utang. So, paano natin i-deal? How would we deal on that when it comes to guarantee letter from the DOH? Kasi alam ko, the only time you'll be given a guarantee letter from the DOH and DOSWD is kung ikaw ay indigent. Pero kung ikaw ay may trabaho, at lalo pat maganda ang trabaho mo, hindi ka qualified. So yung mga taong nasa ganong situation, how do we deal with them? President.
Salamat po, Mr. President, at sa good gentleman mula sa Isabela para sa tanong na iyon. Yung pangunahing layunin po ng bill natin bilang nag-aamyenda sa kasalukuyang batas ay may original at hanggang ngayon layunin pa rin na walang pasyente ma-detain dahil hindi niya babayaran yung bill niya o hindi mabayaran yung buong bill niya. Siyempre, yung unang mga Pilipinong nalalagay sa ganyang sitwasyon ay yung mga mahihirap. Pero sang-ayon ako sa good gentleman, Mr. President, alam po natin na kahit yung mga kababayan natin na hindi maituturing na indigent, maya't maya posibleng nasa sitwasyon na for one reason or another, hindi nila mabayaran yung kanilang buong bill.
Right.
Pati po sila ay hindi dapat ma-detain.
So how do we deal with them?
And so how we deal with them is
President.
kung ano yung kaya nilang mabayaran, plus kung ano yung mga medical assistance programs ng iba't ibang ahensya ng gobyerno, subject pa rin sa criteria at sa guidelines ng bawat medical assistance program na iyon, ay papasok din dagdag para bawasan yung bill nila or makover yung part ng bill nila. At kung may balanse pa rin sa kanilang bill, ito po ay tinuturing na collectible pa rin ng ospital. Collectible pa rin po. Dahil yung ating panukala ay ang ating panukala ay anti-detention.
Okay.
Hindi po siya anti-collection. Ibig sabihin, collectible pa rin ng ospital mula dun.
So they will be allowed to go.
They will be allowed to go para matigil na po natin, Mr. President, yung sigurado ko, ito rin po yung umaabot sa good gentleman, mga horror story na for discharge na ayaw pang paalisin.
Correct.
Literally, ayaw tanggalin yung medical device, yung swero.
Yes.
Nakakabit pa rin dun sa swero stand. Or i-detain yung kanilang bagong panganak na baby. Or kung sa kasawi ang palad, namatay ang pasyente, i-detain yung kanyang cadaver. Ayaw, o kaya may palit ulo na schemes na kamag-anak niya or watcher niya ay i-detain na. Iwawaksi po natin yan, Mr. President. Idagdag natin yung mga medical assistance na kung mag-qualify yung pasyente ayon sa medical social worker sa ospital, bawas yon sa bill na kanyang obligasyon, pero yung balanse ay obligasyon pa rin sa ospital. At least, hindi na detained, kung magaling na, pwedeng bumalik sa trabaho, pwedeng kung nag-issue ng promissory note, ay mas magkakaroon siya ng pagkakataong ibayad yon over time. And yung ospital po ay hindi without recourse dahil pwede pa rin habulin yung balanse through civil proceedings, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Isang question na lamang kasi kanina na-discuss ninyo, I think with Senator Pia Cayetano about yung collateral. Okay? I was trying to follow it pero hindi ko nabutan dahil nag 1-minute suspension kayo. Dito, ito yung pinakaayaw ko na hihingian ng collateral ang isang pasyente para siya makalabas or after na makalabas siya, kailangan may bibigay siyang collateral in lieu of the bill ng hospital. Meron kasi ako naging kaso before, I think several of these cases na yes, meron siyang grab, yung isa meron siyang tricycle. So sabi ng hospital, iwan mo dito yung grab mo, yung kotse mo, or yung isa naman, iwan mo yung tricycle mo. Ayun ang panghanap buhay niya
Exactly.
So we should not allow collateral. Dapat, kung talaga nakita natin, gumawa ng evaluation natin yung mga kinukulan, DOH, DSWD, na yes, magandang trabaho nito, may grab to, may tricycle to, jeepney operator to, pero talagang lubog sa utang. Huwag na natin payagan na hilain pa yung panghanap buhay nila para lang mapambayad sa hospital bill.
Yes, Mr. President. In fact, yan yung kaninang tinanggap nitong representasyon sa page 4, line 3, amendment po ni Senator Erwin, na pwede pong tied up ng isang mortgage yung pasyente, yung bayarin ng pasyente liban sa mga properties primarily used for their livelihood. So precisely, kung lupa na sinasaka ng isang pasyenteng magsasaka o kalabaw na nag-aararo para sa kanya o kotse o motor na ginagamit niya bilang delivery rider or TNVS driver, itong mga or tools kung siya po ay karpintero o siya ay mekaniko, yung mga ito po ay hindi papayagan na gamitin ng ospital bilang collateral sa promissory note. Kasi precisely yun yung kabuhayan niya. Yun yung paraan na mabayaran pa. Kung meron pa siyang bayarin, yun yung paraan na hindi siya magiging ganyang ka medically at financially vulnerable ulit kung kailangan ulit magpa-ospital, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last na lang talaga. I don't know kung ito ay tumutugan pa rin sa bill ni Senator Riza. Para maging fair naman tayo sa mga ospital, of course, kung puro naman promissory notes at hindi nakakabayad yung mga pasyente na inaasahan nila na yun ay gagamitin nila para tumakbo na maayos ang operation ng hospital. Meron ba dyan kasama sa bill na tutulungan yung mga ospital na pagdating sa credit write-off, sa tax break, para ma-offset yung mga bills na hindi nabayaran ng mga pasyente one way or the other?
Salamat, Mr. President. In this period of amendments, willing po akong aralin yan for possible acceptance. At dahil din sa kasalukuyang forma niya, yung bill ay tumitingin sa amyenda tungkol sa alternative security instruments din. Napapayagan yung mga unpaid obligations ma-secure sa pamamagitan ng mortgage o security interest, liban nga po dun sa gamit na ginagamit para sa hanap buhay, co-maker o guarantor, assignment of SSS or GSIS benefits or loan proceeds, PCS o guarantee letter, or DSWD or DOH guarantee letter, Mr. President.
Okay. Baka hindi tayo kanina ang sa akin, ang sinasabi ko kasama dyan sa bill ninyo, Mr. President, is yung bibigyan ng tax break, tax
yes, Mr.
write-off, yung mga ospital na parang hindi naman sila malugi, hindi sila mabankrupt, dahil kung puro na lang ang mga promissory note, tapos hindi nababayaran naman ng pasyente na nakalabas lang, which is good for me. Pero paano naman yung ospital, on the other hand, na hindi na sila makakapag-operate ng maayos sa kanilang ospital dahil marami sa mga pasyente hindi nakabayad. So, bibigyan sila ng tax break o tax break dun sa mga write-off nila.
Actually, Mr. President, yun po yung unang binanggit ko. Ipagpaumanhin ko hindi ko malinaw na nasabi, pero bukas po ang representasyong ito na i-consider yung ganyang proposed amendment. Hintayin ko na lamang po yung formulation mula sa good gentleman.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat din po, Mr. President.
Thank you. We recognize Senator Ping.
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. President, just a short interjection regarding using the primary means of livelihood or prescribing the use of primary means of livelihood as collateral. Who will validate and how will it be validated? If we are confronted with a situation na yung isang pasyente o yung kamag-anak niya, merong more than one means of livelihood, say magsasaka, pero tricycle driver din, how do we confront that issue, that kind of a situation?
I admit, Mr. President, na nung tinanggap ko po yung proposed amendment ni Senator Erwin, ang nasa isip po nitong representasyon ay yung gamit sa primary means of livelihood. I would just need to quickly consult back with him kung ang i-consider ay yung mga gamit sa secondary or even tertiary means of livelihood, Mr. President. Then I'll be glad to get back to the good gentleman from Cavite.
So paano po i-validate yan and who will validate?
Yung medical social worker po sa bawat ospital, Mr. President, na mag-oversee nitong prosesong ito ay kasama po sa magbabalidate kung alin ang means of livelihood ng pasyente at magsiguro na hindi po ito ma-attach sa promissory note or mortgage, Mr. President.
Probably po siguro sa IRR, pwedeng pag-admit pa lang ng pasyente, indicate na nila kung ano yung primary means of livelihood para hindi maging flexible.
I'll be very open. I would be very open kung yan ang maibubungang IRR po, Mr. President.
Pwede rin sa IRR siguro.
Yes, Mr. President. And dun sa posibilidad na isama na sa measure mismo, magko-consult lang ako mabilis kay Senator Erwin and would be glad to give a response within this period of amendment today, Mr.
Upon
President.
admission as a patient.
Opo, Mr.
Siguro
President.
indicate na lang doon kagad para maliwanag.
Salamat,
Ano yung
Mr.
abuse? Thank you, Mr. President.
Salamat po sa payo, Mr.
I think the
President.
first determination is whether the patient is indigent or not.
Yes, Mr.
Ganun,
President.
I think in the bill, that's how it's framed. And then the second determination, kung indigent siya, ano yung source of income niya.
Yes, Mr. President. At bukod sa indigent, meron po tayong term dito sa bill na financially incapacitated. Na ina-anticipate ko po, baka dun nga papasok yung proposed amendment na dinadraft ni Senator Raffy.
So, for example,
yung isa sa mga unang binanggit nila.
Hindi siya indigent, but at that point in time,
Opo.
meron siyang, let's say, may calamity
Opo.
at wala siyang source of income, so pwede siyang pumasok dyan sa category na yan.
Opo. Kung otherwise, hindi siya mabibilang sa indigents na tinanong ni Senator Raffy, maaring lower middle class siya or working poor, pero mangangailangan ng tulong nitong binubuo nating panukalang batas, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for those
Salamat,
interventions.
Mr. President. And for, again, with apologies, an anterior amendment from the Senate President on page 6 still, but line 15, delete the preposition of and replace with the conjunction or. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, amendments approved.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Mr. President, no more committee amendments from this representation. I would be ready to circle back to the proposed amendment of Senator Pia if she wishes to
This
take
is
the
on
floor
page,
again.
which page? Good sponsor?
Page 3, section 2.
Page 3, section 2. Okay. Which is actually the meat of the
Yes.
bill. Yeah.
So actually, Mr. President, dear sponsor, I don't have any more amendments here. It's more of, I would like us to be able to put on record how will the hospitals be paid for the expenses of the indigent patients. If the body will recall, during our last discussion, I had put on record that the amounts could be quite substantial. And let me just grab my notes. So I included in the discussion the concept of the zero balance billing, which was part of the SONA 2 years ago, and if I'm not mistaken, reiterated this SONA, because the zero balance billing in its perfect form would mean that there is no longer any balance that will be paid when a patient is discharged. So wala na siyang babayaran. Yun yung talagang utopian concept ng zero balance billing. But upon clarification, this was last year, the DOH came out with the policy that the zero balance billing will only apply to DOH hospitals.
Yes, Mr. President.
Sorry,
If not-
I'll just complete. Is it okay?
Sorry, good,
So just to
General
complete, it only, the zero balance billing only applies to DOH hospitals and specialty hospitals. And that number's 91 yan. 87 DOH hospitals plus 4, tama ba? Plus 4 specialty hospitals, 91. And yet, our total number of hospitals is around 1,000. So, wala pang 10% yung mga ospital na pwedeng puntahan ng mga tao para maka-avail ng zero balance billing. So I'm simply presenting the reality on the ground na pagpunta doon ng pasyente at nag-expect siya ng wala siyang kakayanan magbayad, and Her Honor has included in the discussion a very important segment of the population, yung financially incapacitated na iba pa sa indigent. Talagang nangangailangan yan. Maraming middle class na namumulube dahil sa presyo dahil sa nagkasakit, mahal nga magkasakit. So I'm very happy naman na we recognize the need of those who are actually nga financially capable pa nga yan pero mamumulubi ka talaga. So lahat naman tayo nagkakaintindihan dyan. It's not a point of contention. Ang gusto ko lang ilagay natin sa record, and off the record kasi nabanggit naman ng sponsor that she can present the numbers, which I believe came from the Senate President, which I believe came from me. So
And from PIDS, Mr. President.
I think we know these numbers naman. Pero pakita naman natin sa tao kung ano to. Kasi hindi naman ako nag-invento niyan. Galing po yan sa PIDS, no? Yung ating kinikilalang think tank. Sa kanila nang galing yan kung magkano gagastusin, magkano ang annual na gastos natin sa mga nagkakasakit na kailangan mag-ospital, ma-ospital. Would you like to be the one to put it on record, Your Honor?
It's all right, Mr. President. First of all, we are not forcing private hospitals into a zero balance billing arrangement. This bill does not create zero balance billing in private hospitals. Hindi po niya ine-extinguish yung mga unpaid balances. Pinoprohibit lang talaga yung detention o kaya withholding on the ground of non-payment. So for the record, hospitals may still collect unpaid lawful charges through promissory notes, lawful security, guarantee letters, assignments where allowed by law, and civil remedies. Ngayon po, going to yung data no na inestimate ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies at nakuha nating lahat mula sa Office of the Senate President. Ito po nagpo-provide ng data sets covering indigent inpatient claims from 2024 to 2026. Pero at the outset pa lang, Mr. President, disclaimer kaagad, hindi po dapat ito tignan na fiscal cost of the bill. Kasi hindi po natin pinapa-automatic guarantee sa gobyerno lahat ng unpaid bills ng ating mga pasyente o ating mga pamilya who would otherwise be detained in hospitals, clinics, or like facilities dahil hindi pa nila mabayaran yung kanilang bill or kanilang buong bill. Because after yung whatever, kung mayroon man na mabayaran ng pasyente at pamilya niya, magka-come into play hindi lang itong mga nasa data ng PIDS, pero lahat ng medical assistance programs ng iba't ibang government agencies as governed by each of their criteria at saka conditions kung qualified ba o hindi yung pasyente at pamilya niya sa particular na assistance na iyon. And in the end, kapag may balanse pa, collectible pa rin ito on the part of the hospital. At pwede pa rin niyang habulin ang balancing ito, including through civil proceedings. Basta ang importante po ay makakamit yung unang layunin ng kasalukuyang batas at layunin pa rin, primary objective pa rin nitong amendatory bill natin na ang pasyente o pamilya niya ay hindi nadidetain. So, tinignan pa rin po namin sa office ko yung data mula sa PIDS, yung data sets ginamit para i-compute yung gross residual billing gap. Again, hindi po ina-assume na nire-represent nito yung amount na actually collected from the patient. Likewise, hindi po dapat i-assume na nire-represent nito yung actual out-of-pocket expenditures. And again, it should not be construed na ang national government na ang automatic guarantor. Kasi yung guarantee letter, accepted in lieu of a promissory note, again, hindi niya ginagawang guarantor ang gobyerno sa buong balanse. There will still be those three components. Kung ano yung kahit konti or minsan wala, mabayaran ng pasyente at pamilya niya, tapos yung iba't ibang medical assistance programs ng iba't ibang government agencies. And kung may balanse, recoverable pa rin ang ospital, including through civil proceedings. So would the gentle lady like me to put the numbers on the record? Because I can do that. If she will bear with me.
I think we should
All
because we can now have a clearer discussion kung ano yung
Alright.
ma-expect ng mga tao pag they're confronted with this situation na hospital sila tapos gusto nilang ma-discharge. So lagay natin sa record yan, Madam Sponsor.
All right. But again, Mr. President, just with that disclaimer na ito yung magiging exposure ng gobyerno kung yung buong balanse na hindi mabayaran ng pasyente at pamilya niya ay sasaluhin ng gobyerno, which is not the case. So again, I just want to put that on record na wag nating isipin na ang hindi mabayaran ng pasyente at pamilya niya ay babayaran lahat ng gobyerno. Masa-subject pa rin to the requirements at criteria ng bawat medical assistance program, ng bawat government agency. At sa huli, kung may balanse pa, obligasyon pa rin ng pamilya at pasyente, collectible pa rin on the part of the hospital. So, Government as guarantor means the potential budgetary obligation that may arise when DOH, DSWD, PCSO, or other government medical assistance programs issue or honor guarantee letters for qualified, indigent, or financially incapacitated patients covering the unpaid balances of hospital bills after, Mr. President, that PhilHealth benefits, discounts, patient payments, kung mayroon, HMO or insurance payments, charitable deductions, and other applicable benefits have been applied. So again, yung ipuput on record ko ngayon ay for purposes lamang of estimating fiscal exposure. Again, it does not mean that the automatic full payment of the entire hospital bill. It does not also mean zero balance billing. It does not include amounts already covered by PhilHealth, private insurance, HMO, patient payment, hospital discount, or charity write-off. It also does not include payments who are not assessed and qualified under applicability eligibility rules, agency guidelines, and the availability of funds. So availability of funds pa rin, Mr. President, per medical assistance program of each government agency. So for proxy computation, the estimated government exposure may be expressed as, so estimated government exposure, kaya ba nating ipakita ito on the screen, equals number of qualified cases times average residual unpaid balance times assumed approval or payment rate. Teka, saan nawala yung aking? Sandali lang po, Mr. President. Okay. So yung estimated government exposure equals number of qualified cases times average residual unpaid balance times assumed approval or payment rate, where number of qualified cases refers to the assumed number of indigent or financially incapacitated patients, cases that may be endorsed for government medical assistance. In the absence of a national hospital detention data set na tinanong kanina ni Senator Joel, dahil wala po tayong ganyang data set talaga na kompleto ng cases of hospital detention, yung PhilHealth indigent or NHTS PR claims may be used as a narrow proxy. So proxy lang siya, Mr. President, while all indirect contributor claims may be used as a broader stress test proxy. Yung average residual unpaid balance refers to the assumed unpaid amount remaining after PhilHealth, discounts, patient payments, coverage of HMOs, charitable deductions, and other benefits have been applied. And assumed approval or payment rate refers to the portion of endorsed cases that government assistance programs can actually cover, subject to eligibility, agency guidelines, and always availability of funds. So ito, Mr. President, pinepresenta ko lang itong proxy bilang fiscal risk scenario. Hindi po ito official cost estimate talaga. At ipinapakita pa rin ito na importante itong bill bilang primarily anti-detention measure. Hindi po talaga siya automatic government guarantee para sa lahat ng unpaid private hospital bills. So, okay, kung gagamitin natin yung NHTS, yung PhilHealth 2024 indigent claims, ang volume po nun, ayon sa PIDS, ay mga 2.07 million claims. Again, narrow proxy ito. And assume natin for stress testing purposes, 100% approval o payment rate na hindi nangyayari. A residual unpaid balance of 10,000 pesos per case would imply around 20.7 billion pesos in annual exposure. Kung 25,000 pesos per case ang residual na hindi pa nababayaran sa bill ng mga pasyente, ang exposure ay tataas sa 51.8 billion pesos. At 50,000 per case, the exposure could exceed 100 billion pesos. Pero kung kalahati lang naman ng qualified cases ay ma-approve or mababayaran, yung figures ay makakalahati. So ang exposure would be at around 50 billion pesos. If you will bear with me, Mr. President and gentle lady, with more numbers, pero dahil kinrunch po talaga namin yung data ng PIDS, kung i-apply yung test more broadly sa lahat ng indirect contribution claims, o around 8.61 million claims, mas lalaki yung exposure. Kung 100% ang payment rate, 10,000 pesos residual unpaid balance per case would imply around 86 billion pesos exposure, while 25,000 pesos per case would imply around 215 billion pesos. Pero again, Mr. President, yung actual exposure ay magdedepende pa sa kung ilang mga kaso ay talagang magka-qualify at aktual na maaprubahan at mababayaran sa ilalim ng rules ng bawat ahensya at available funds niya. So for context pa, Mr. President, yung existing public medical and crisis assistance envelope ay substantial, significant, pero of course limitado. Ang DOH maifip ay mga 51.6 billion pesos para sa taong 2026. DSWD-AX ay mga 63.9 billion pesos at yung medical assistance ng PCSO, although noong 2024 amounted to mga 3.27 billion pesos for 330,023 beneficiaries or roughly 9,900 per beneficiary. And again, kahit pa ulit-ulit po Mr. President, importanteng bigyan ko ng diin, hindi po ito official cost estimates dahil ang PhilHealth claims ay hindi pareho ng unique detained patients. Hindi lahat ng napapakinabangan ang PhilHealth coverage ay nade-detain. Hindi lahat ng claims involve unpaid balances. May mga claims na nababayaran naman, walang unpaid balances. Hindi lahat ay private hospital cases. At hindi lahat ay magka-qualify para sa government guarantee letters. Proxy scenarios lamang po ito na magpapakita o pinapakita ang fiscal risk kung ma-misinterpret natin ang measure bilang full government guarantee. Dahil hindi po full government guarantee itong bill. Itong bill ay primarily anti-detention. Pero sinasabi pa rin natin, ina-uphold pa rin natin, pagkatapos anumang mabayaran ng pasyente at pamilya niya, pagkatapos may coverage ng alinmang medical assistance program o mga medical assistance programs ng government agency or agencies, kapag ka may balanse pa rin, obligasyon pa rin ng pasyente at pamilya, collectible pa rin on the part of the hospital. So, bilang suma sa pag-numbers crunch namin sa datos ng PIDS, yung safe fiscal position ay malinaw pa rin, Mr. President, dahil walang automatic full guarantee, walang automatic zero balance billing, at wala ring automatic extinguishing ng hospital debt. Ang anumang guarantee letter o assistance nananatiling subject sa eligibility, guidelines, approval, at available funds. So, muli, I cannot stress enough, ang pinagbabawal ng panukala natin ay detention. Hindi niya po pinagbabawal ang lawful collection, Mr. President.
Thank you for that lengthy and quite exhaustive discussion to the sponsor. We appreciate that she gave us a lot of numbers, which I've never seen, no? I've never seen these numbers. What we've seen are the PIDS, the PIDS numbers. But nevertheless, malalaki, the bottom line is malaki ho ang gastos. And I agree with Her Honor that this bill never intended to be a government guarantee. Hindi nga. The only reason for Her Honor's information, for the sponsor's information, that we kept on bringing back yung magkano ang babayaran ng gobyerno because ang private hospital, yun yung aasahan niya. I mean, that's, okay, I'll go back. If you recall, na-announce nga na may zero balance billing. So at first, akala ng lahat covered yon, no? Lahat ng tao, akala nila kahit saan sila hospital pupunta, covered. Then DOH clarified, ay hindi, covered lang ang zero balance billing ng DOH hospitals and specialty hospitals. So pag doon ka pumunta, wala kang babayaran, government ang magbabayad nun. Clear naman po tayo doon, Madam Sponsor, di ba?
Yes, Mr. President.
Na yon. So at least yun pa nga, whether indigent ka pa nga o hindi, wala nang problema, right? Do we understand each other? Walang problema.
Under the zero
no?
balance billing system, Mr.
Under the zero
President.
balance. So kaya nga sabi ko earlier, yung utopian if we look at it in the best possible scenario, in a utopian world, if all the hospitals and health centers were zero balance billing, I guess we don't even need this law. Is that correct? Tama?
Well, actually, that utopian world, Mr. President, was already contemplated in part by the original law. Dahil sinubukan na, even in the original law, siguruhin na no one would be detained. It's just that in the past years ng implementation, nakita natin yung kahirapan ng implementasyon to the point na, gaya ng pinut on the record namin ni Senator Joel, marami-rami pa ring horror stories na gusto sanang mapigilan ng original law at gusto nating mas ma-realize ngayon through this amendatory bill.
So
Mr.
kaya nga, so
President.
malayo pa tayo dun sa yung utopian version ng zero balance billing kasi nga there is a balance to be paid. And hanggat hindi nababayaran yon, ang tendency ng hospital, if we did not pass this law, the original law, and if we don't improve on it, is naghahanap ng way yung hospital to get paid. And one way that they feel that they can get paid is that they somehow find a way to go around the existing law to, if not detain the person, detain the kamag-anak, detain the personal properties. Yun yung situation natin, no? Correct? We understand each other on that.
We understand each other, Mr. President. And again, part of the situation, this is not a zero balance billing law. This actually provides for non-detention of patients and families, even outside the ZBB system, by putting into play whatever limited or absent resources of the patient and family. Tapos yung iba't ibang medical assistance programs ng mga government agencies, apart pa po from the zero balance billing system. And then again, yung balances na obligasyon pa rin ng pasyente at pamilya at collectible pa rin on the part of the hospitals, Mr. President.
But the reality, Madam Sponsor, Mr. President, is yung indigent patient and even those who are financially capable. What is financially capable? It would appear, and it's not defined here, no? I'm not aware that we define that, but if you have a medical bill in minimum wage, you're a minimum wage earner, you're financially capable probably to feed your family. Kung dalawa kayong minimum wage earner sa family, kasi the numbers that we have to feed a family of 4 already exceeds the income of a minimum wage earner. So I don't know if we want to define what is a financially capable person, but my point is, kahit na may konti kang kakayanan, lagpas pa sa minimum wage, kahit dalawa pa kayo nagmi-minimum wage, pag tinamaan ka ng matinding sakit, kakapusin ka. Yun talaga yun, kakapusin ka. Magkaroon ng heart disease, magkaroon ng prolonged stay because of pneumonia. And one of the reasons for that is that hindi pa na-implement ng PhilHealth ang DRG. Ang DRG is the diagnosis-related groups, which means, for example, sa isang sakit na katulad ng pneumonia, imbis na 1 or 2 lang yung category, o 20,000, tapos na yan, bayad ka na. They divide it into groups such that meron kang slight pneumonia, severe, serious, life-threatening pneumonia, so that the bill would be covered even if it's in the hundreds of thousands. We don't have that yet. So for now, pag binayaran ka, babayaran ka lang ng kung ano yung minimum, no? And that is why, in that sense, there will be a balance left because ang babayaran ng PhilHealth is yung maliit na amount that was computed many, many years ago, and it's below what it cost the hospital to it is way below the amount na ginastos ng hospital to treat the patient. So, brings us back to the main point. Ang point po natin is, PIDS gave us figures in the billions. Her Honor also gave us figures. I tried to jot down. Sabi niya kung 50,000 per case, abutin tayo ng 100 billion pesos. Pag kakalahati lang nun, abutin pa rin tayo ng 50 billion. Then meron din siyang computation na pag 25,000 pesos per case, abutin tayo ng 215 billion. I was just jotting notes from Her Honor's statement earlier. The point is this. For 2026, the balance provided for DOH hospitals zero balance billing is just 64.97 billion. 64 billion for DOH hospitals lang. So yung point ko lang naman po is all the other hospitals, and I already mentioned that there are 1,000 plus hospitals, less than 100 or less than 10% have a zero balance policy. So for the remaining 900 plus hospitals, may balanse talaga dyan. Yung iba, katulad naman tama yung sinabi ng sponsor natin, makakabayad. Hindi naman ibig sabihin ng lahat na yon magiging issue itong hospital detention. Kasi yung iba dyan, sa PhilHealth pa lang, bayad na. Pero kadalasan, because we have the numbers also, ang nababayaran ng PhilHealth is on average 30% of the bill. So Her Honor mentioned the different mechanisms to further complete the payment. It could be government intervention, yung personal din na ilalabas ng pasyente at ng mga kamag-anak. So lahat naman yun possibility. So there's a percentage of patients who will not need to avail of this no hospital detention bill. But there will be those that need to avail of it. And the question is, who will pay their balance? Again, Her Honor clarified that this bill does not say it is automatically government. I agree po. Pero the point is there is a bill and sino ang magbabayad. So from the start, ang sinasabi lang natin is we are concerned for the private hospitals that would be left with the bill. And I just want to put on record, hindi ako mag-o-object or anything because we have the same purpose. I simply want to put on record na sinabi na ng mga private hospitals, I have a letter from them saying that they would be very concerned. It is from the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines. Very concerned po sila, especially for the small and medium-sized facilities who would bear more of the uncompensated care. So yun lang naman yung concern nila. So, can government step in? Yes, government can step in. I will put on record again the numbers that you have heard me say. It is not new. There is 292 billion. So this is 1/3 of a trillion unappropriated and unreleased funds for PhilHealth. Ito po ay na-earmark na natin sa syntax law. Over the years, this amounts to 292.33. So even if I were to use Her Honor's figures of 25,000 per case, 215 billion, o di covered ang isang taon. If I use a lower number, baka covered ang 2 taon, 3 taon, 4 na taon, 5 taon. The point is that I'm trying to make, and this is not the problem of the sponsor right now with this bill, is that meron namang kahit papanong pondo pang pagkukunan kung sana nare-releasean tayo. Si DBM Secretary, Acting Secretary, nandiyan dyan kanina, sabi ko nga kay Senate President, ay sana nakausap natin, na-present natin yung matagal ng utang ng DBM sa pondo para sa PhilHealth na gastusin natin. I will just break this down for everyone's sake, Your Honor. 292.33 billion pesos is unappropriated and unreleased, and the breakdown is as follows. Deficit from Syntax is 113 billion. From PCSO and PAGCOR, 77.46 billion pesos. This is included in the GAA but unreleased 101.43 billion. So 292.33 po ang total niyan. So malaki-laki din yan, sana makakatulong pang gastos. I would also like to add one more point. I mentioned earlier that the zero balance billing for the year 2026 is 64.97 billion. As the Vice Chairman of the Committee on Finance and handling the budget of DOH and PhilHealth, this representation proposed some amendments. The amendments were specifically for the zero balance billings. Ito po ang amendments ko na tawag ng iba, insertion. Bahala na kayo kung anong mas appropriate na term. But these amendments, thanks to the Senate President, were accepted because at that time he was the Chairman of the Committee on Finance. So the amendments are as follows. 3.3 billion for DOH hospital. So in other words, meron ng budget ZBB for DOH hospitals, pero sa computation ng DOH kulang pa rin. So they gave us the numbers, we presented it, it was approved by the then Chairman of the Committee on Finance. 3.3 billion yan pesos. And then for the regional DOH hospitals, 6 billion. Mas malaki yan kasi nga regional na to eh. So ito yung sa labas ng Metro Manila. 6 billion pesos. And finally, this was the proposal of this representation. It didn't come from DOH, but we proposed it. DOH agreed that it is important, so we proposed it to the chairman of the secretary, to our committee chair, and it was approved, and so it was carried in the GAA. 1 billion pilot for LGU hospitals. Kasi nga, nakakaawa yung mga LGU dahil sila din yung pinupuntahan ng mga pasyente na expected nila may zero balance, yung pala hindi covered. Mali ito kinumpute natin, kaya lang kasi yung capacity na i-approve yan ng chairman ng finance, alam ko hindi na siya makakahanap ng pondo beyond 1 billion. So 1 billion na muna kasi pilot lang naman. So this is a total of a little bit over 10 billion that we added to the zero balance building. Anyway, dear colleagues, I'm just putting this all in record.
Specialty
Please go ahead.
hospitals. We also
DOH
had
and specialty.
specialty
Yes.
hospitals, about 3 billion plus for
DOH.
for the different specialty hospitals. 1 billion each.
1 billion each.
Yeah,
your
1 billion
memory,
each.
your
Yeah.
memory is unparalleled, Mr. President. You are absolutely correct. 1 billion for each specialty hospital. So we do what we can, no? And so, like I said, I have no objection. I'm just putting this on record, and I hope that we can remain vigilant and open to the concerns that may be raised by the private hospitals later on, because ang problema kasi natin yung sila yung sasalo ng issue na to Sila ho yung kailangan sumunod sa batas. So, mindful po tayo na marami nagsasabing, ang gaganda nga ng batas na pinapasan nyo, hindi naman kayo yung mag-i-implement. Ang mag-i-implement, in this case, is the private hospitals, the LGU hospitals, the private, not even hospitals, but yung mga katulad nung panganakan, marami yan. So let's be mindful of that and the challenges that they might be confronted with. Because at the end of the day, we all agree that we want a strong anti-hospital detention law. And I thank the sponsor for shepherding this bill. But yun nga, with a clear request that we continue our oversight on the implementation of this soon-to-be law. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Madam Sponsor.
Thank you also to the gentle lady from Taguig and Pateros. I commit to all the colleagues, especially the gentle lady, that of course, dahil yung mga hospital, especially the private hospitals sa ating service delivery network, which is one of our pillars sa universal healthcare system. Of course, the Senate and especially our Committee on Health are also looking to continue to pass laws to assist them to operate maximally and optimally. Well taken yung pinuto on record ng gentle lady na concern ng PHAP. I'm sure even the member hospitals of PHAP, ayaw naman nila na sila yung magiging site ng hospital detention. So we will be counting on their participation dun sa finally makakraft nating panukalang batas, which clearly recognizes yung karapatan ng mga ospital na kolektahin yung mga tamang bill na naikikwenta. Kaugnay rin ng amendment kanina galing kay Senator Joel on bill transparency. And then again, as both the gentle lady and I have recognized, unang magbabayad kung may kaya kahit maliit, yung pasyente at pamilya, then the different medical assistance programs of the different government agencies will come into play according to each of their own rules. Kung magka-qualify o hindi yung pasyente at pamilya. And in the end, kung may balanse, then it remains the obligation of the patient and family, collectible by the hospital. Yung ibang reforms na pinoint out ng gentle lady, for example, yung pagbabalik ng national government, pagbayad niya ng utang niya sa PhilHealth. I join her 100% in that with all the health advocates here in the Senate. At yung patuloy na pag-modernize, pag-reform ng PhilHealth system, including yung pag-shift na yon sa DRG. But in the end, Mr. President, yung original dream, I wouldn't even say it's utopian, pero yung original humanistic dream nung kasalukuyang batas, which was shepherded in her time by the gentle lady, na mawaksi na sa karanasan natin ang hospital detention. Learning the lessons we've learned in the past decades of very difficult implementation on the part of DOH sa pamamagitan itong panukalang batas. Precisely, we are trying ma-achieve na yung pangarap na iyon. And after all, kapag hindi ma-detain yung pasyente at pamilya niya, if they can go back to family life, work, studies, mas magiging resilient sila if and when the next medical emergency comes around. And they can participate more fully in generating and paying back yung resources na kailangan kung meron pa rin silang pagkakautang na sana hindi na kailangan pang habulin ng ospital through civil proceedings, Mr. President. Apologies again, Mr. President. There is one proposed committee amendment that I failed to make of record and accept on the record, Mr. President. And this comes from the Senate President himself. In the same section, after the amendment of Senator Villanueva, to insert this following phrase: the DOH shall act on complaints and grievances received through their patient grievance and redress mechanism within 5 working days from receipt thereof. Failure of the responsible public official or employee to act on any complaint within the prescribed period shall constitute simple neglect of duty, subject to the filing of the appropriate administrative action based on prevailing Civil Service Commission rules and regulations, provided that in cases where the cause of delay is due to force majeure or other analogous circumstances, the prescribed period mandated herein shall be suspended and appropriate adjustments shall be made, provided further that in such cases of justifiable delay, the responsible public official or employee shall notify the complainant of the reason for the delay and the adjusted period to act on the complaint. For the record, Mr. President, the said proposed amendment imposes a stricter time-bound obligation on the Department of Health to resolve complaints involving unlawful patient detention. And therefore, subject to style, Mr. President, I accept the proposed amendment.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is approved.
And Mr. President, there is one more proposed amendment that this representation will await, hopefully within the day, from Senator Raffy.
Just to, before we close the period of amendment today, let me just express my opinion on the discussions between Senator Pia and Senator Risa. I do share the thoughts of Senator Pia that it's not the intention to give difficulty to the private hospitals in terms of their operation. Katulad po ng mga private schools, mga private hospitals, partner rin ng gobyerno sa pagbibigay ng hospital services. And pero kami rin po sa Valenzuela naging biktima rin kami ng palit ulo scheme. In fact, merong kaming constituent sa Valenzuela na hindi pinalabas, ang pinalit ay relative nilang i-detain. So I support the intention of the bill na hindi pwedeng magkaroon ng palit ulo, hindi rin pwedeng i-detain yung mga pasyente. Lalo na kung may mga pasyenteng hirap na hirap at marami rin pasyente na pag may sakit yung kanilang relative, nagpapanik sila at under stress. No? At hindi pwedeng i-take advantage rin ng mga hospitals yung ganong na situation. And it's good to note na ang gobyerno naman may kapasidad na tumulong sa mga hospitals. Nasabi na ito ni Senator Pia kanina, but ulitin ko lang. Ang MAIP ay merong 51 billion in the 2026 GAA at ang intention talaga ng MAIP is to support the private hospitals. Alam natin na ang PhilHealth kaya lang up to 30 to 40%, depende pa sa sakit. Yung balance, dito pumapasok yung medical assistance. At of course, yung AIX, ito yung assistance na binibigay sa mga constituents natin. For 2026 budget, about 63 billion. So itong dalawang funds no, pwedeng magamit ng mga private hospitals para mabayaran sila. No? So
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Senator Risa, for...
President,
Yeah, yes, Senator
just a quick,
Pia. Yeah.
just a quick statement for the information of the body. Yung mga recommendations ng minority group for MyFIP and AIX have been suspended. Pag may lumalapit sa amin na pasyente, hindi na kami pwedeng sinabi sa website ng DOH at DSWD, hindi na papansinin yung recommendation namin. So for the body's information and for the information of the Senate President. So like in my case, for over a decade, ang daming pumupunta sa akin, humihingi ng tulong. And just in the last few months, this has been weaponized against us. In the case of Senator Aimee and Senator Bongo, years na yata. I'm just saying, Mr. President, for the record. So sa akin lang naman po, kung ang ibang kasamahan natin pwede namang makatulong sa mga kababayan, bakit yung iba sa amin hindi pwedeng mag-recommend? Hindi na ho ba kami marunong mag-recommend? Yung mga lumalapit ba sa amin are less of Filipino citizens? Yun lang naman po sa akin. Kasi sobra akong na-shock na nagkagano na tayo eh. I hope the Senate President can do something about this. In fairness, napakabait sa akin nung inyong kapatid. I think nakita naman niya yung magandang loob ko nung dinefend ko yung kanyang budget. So it's not on him. I don't know kung saan nanggagaling ang utos na yan.
Yes, well, ang Senate naman is recommendatory. Of course, we just recommend, and we'll look into this
Mr. President,
matter.
we've done it before during my time as Senate President, also Senator Cheese's time as Senate President, and also Senator Soto, as a matter of fact. He had put funds here in the Action Center for the senators, regardless of political color, Mr. President. Let's allow we definitely should give a budget to that. And whoever senator requests for assistance for the patients that go, hindi talaga mawawala, Mr. President. Meron talagang pasyente pumupunta sa amin. Sana dito na sa Senado,
Yes, meron
pwede
tayong-
nating tulungan, regardless of political color, Mr. President.
Meron tayong public assistance center
Yeah.
na pwedeng lumapit yung ating mga constituents to ask for help. At
Yes.
galing yan sa institution as recommendation, no? Dahil nagre-recommend tayo sa mga different executive agencies. So we'll look into that also, and we'll revive that concept. Maganda yung concept because Senate as an institution ang tumutulong.
Tsaka fair yung Senate President, Mr. President. Fair yung Senate President natin na yun, regardless
Yes.
of political color or
Fair
affiliation.
naman lahat ng Senate President.
Dapat
Lalo
tulungan
na
po
ikaw,
natin. Dapat
majority
tulungan
leader.
natin sila, Mr. President. I totally agree.
Mr. President, just to add to the discussion, totoo po yan. I know that we've had discussions internally. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng past and current Senate President because of that funding. But again, this goes to the point that I was also raising with a good sponsor that laging kulang. So alam nyo yan, pagkatapos pumunta sa opisina ng isang senador, pupunta din sa opisina ng ibang senador kasi nga, kulang. So, Mr. President, pagpunta nila dun sa baba, dun sa general fund na galit ng Senate office, iisa-isahin pa rin nila yung mga opisina ng mga senador kasi kulang ang pondo. That's the whole point. Kulang. So, yun lang. I just wanted to emphasize that bakit naman yung recommendatory power pag naging minority ka, wala nang validity, wala nang respeto doon. Yun lang naman kasi pare-pareho naman tayong senador, pare-pareho naman tayong naninilbihan sa mga kababayan natin.
Thank you for that. Yes, Senator, before we recognize the sponsor, we recognize the former Senate President, Senator Tito Soto.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I know if the period of amendment is closed already?
Not yet. We're
You're
still
still-
in the period of amendments.
What page are we in now, Mr. President?
We are actually page 3. But since Senator P already terminated her proposal, we are actually near the closing of the period of amendments.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. If you don't mind, then it will distinguished lady favor me with a very tiny
Mr. President.
observation on my part. Just as I was having a conversation with Senator Raffy Tulfo in the lounge, and we were, of course, monitoring the amendment, there was an amendment on the, I am not sure what line that is, but there was an amendment where you mentioned local government officials who might not support or something like that, will not take action.
The mention of local government officials, Mr. President, was generally in relation to DILG, na kasama po ang DILG sa mga ahensya na dapat ma-coordinate ng DOH dito sa anti-hospital detention law.
Yeah, but you said something to the effect that it will be a simple neglect of duty if they do not. What portion is
The
that?
reference, Mr. President, was to hospital officials or employees.
Hospital
Yes,
officials.
Mr. President, not
All right.
local government officials.
My tiny amendment, Mr. President, is why say simple? Remove the simple. Just make it neglect of duty.
Yes, and Mr. President.
Why do we have to call it simple neglect of duty?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I correct myself. It was in fact the last committee amendment that I proposed on the floor and accepted from the Senate President actually. So it does mention, the good gentleman, former Senate President is right. It does mention failure of the responsible public official or employee. This is to act on any complaint within the prescribed period. So the question now, why simple neglect of duty
Yes.
and why not neglect of duty?
Yes. Why not remove the Anyway, it's a simple amendment. But,
Yeah, Mr. President, subject to style lang naman yan eh. Styling on the wording.
or
Unless there's
Yeah nga eh.
a penal provision
well,
for simple
according
neglect
to-
of duty and neglect of duty.
Well, according to Senator Lacson, it should be either simple or serious. Or less serious.
Thank you.
So my
I-
question now is, why not just neglect of duty?
I was going, Mr. President, because of the former Senate President's proposed amendment to quickly seek legal advice from my legis, but I see a thumbs up. I just need to clarify, are we accepting neglect of duty or serious neglect of duty? Neglect of duty. Subject to stand, Mr. President, this representation accepts the proposed amendment of the good Senate President to amend the simple neglect of duty to neglect of duty, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion to accept the proposal of our former Senate President Tito Soto is hereby approved.
Thank you, Mr.
Subject to
President.
style.
Subject to style. And salamat po sa good former Senate President. May isang huling amendment, Mr. President, galing kay Senator Raffy. And he has asked me to read it for him. Page 6 pa rin po, after line 21, a new section 4, subject to style. To read, section 4, tax deductions. The unpaid balance of the hospital bill or medical expense of a financially incapacitated patient after deduction of PhilHealth and other government health assistance benefits, which is guaranteed to facilitate the patient's discharge, shall be deductible from the gross income of such hospital or medical clinic for income tax purposes. And subject to style, Mr. President, I so move.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is approved.
Salamat, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, period of amendments hereby closed.
Well, maybe we can
Salamat,
just
Mr.
get the clean copy so that we can study this further
Yes.
before we can approve it on second reading tomorrow,
Correct,
Mr. President.
correct.
With the
So
permission of the
suspend.
sponsor. That's all right.
Very gladly. Maraming salamat
We
po, Mr.
suspend the
President.
consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We suspend muna consideration of the measure for the clean copy.
Any objection? Hearing none, the aforementioned bill is hereby suspended.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the sponsors and to all the authors of the amendments, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Raffy Tulfo, to avail of the privilege hour before we take up other official
We
matters.
recognize the gentleman from Davao City, Senator Raffy Tulfo.
And Isabela. Mr.
And
President.
Isabela Province. Marami hong taga Isabela ho dito. Sige.
Mr. President. Mas maganda kung una yung Isabela, Mr. President, tapos pangalan
Tapos Davao City. We will take note of that.
Baka magalit misis ko eh. Anyway, thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I speak before you today on a matter of personal and collective privilege. When economic activity comes at the expense of safe water, clean air, livelihood, workers' health, and the safety of the surrounding communities, we must ask, sino ang umaasenso? At sino naman ang nagbabayad ng presyo ng pag-asenso ng ilan? Noong July 18, sinalakay ng National Bureau of Investigation kasama ang Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission ang Chuangsing Steel Incorporated sa Magalang, Pampanga. Mahigit 3 billion pesos na halaga ng radioactive at substandard steel products ang nasamsam. 4 na opisyal ng kumpanya ang naaresto at daan-daang manggagawa ang inalis sa hazardous conditions. Mr. President, bago pa man ang raid ng NBI, lumapit na po sa aking programa noong December 2023 ang mga residente na nagsumbong sa akin dahil sa makapal na usok na umano'y nagmula sa planta. Nangako Municipal Environment and Natural Resources Office o MENRO ng Magalang, Pampanga na tututukan ito. Mahigit 2 taon ang lumipas. Imbis na mawala ang problema, mas malala pa pala ang matutuklasan. At kung hindi nyo natatanong itong kumpanya na ito, ang nag-supply ng bakal sa gumuhong 9-story building sa Pampanga noong Mayo kung saan namatay ang 30 katao. I would like to invite your attention to a short video.
Itong Chuangsing Steel Incorporated, pabrika ng bakal. Yung bakal, ay nagdudulot naman po ng makapal na uso.
Yes po, pwede.
Nakarating na po ito sa mga kinukulang, kaya lang wala
Wala pong response.
Mr. Mercado, ngayon nakarating na sa inyo itong problema sa bakal. So inaasahan ko po, kikilos po kayo at inyong mga kasamahan dyan sa Menro.
So we will do it tomorrow.
Yumayanig po yung lupa. Tapos pag ating gabi hanggang madaling araw, dinig-dinig mo yung ingay. Parang may humahampas na malakas. Tapos mabaho. Siyempre, pag naamoy mo, makakatulog ka pa ba? Hanggang sa may stress ka na. Nagka-asthma yung mister ko. Hanggang nauwi na sa emphysema. Mula nung dumating yung bakalan na yan.
Lalo na po kami, dito lang kami nakatira, malapit po kami. Talagang yung hingay, tsaka po yung usok, pag naamoy mo masakit po dito, pag gising mo, yung pilema mo, itim.
Kasi yung tubig dito, deep well, contaminated na.
Po yung waste na slugs na tinapon nila doon sa may part. Gumawa pa naman sila ng part doon na may chemical din, may nakatapon na maliliit na bakal, na binasag na bote. Kumusta naman po yung kalusugan ng mga mag-i-stay doon? Na kung mag-i-stay yung mga bata doon, nag-aalala pa kami ng mga magulang. O ba't nagawa nila yung gano'n? Alam nila na may chemical yun, ba't tinagay pa nila doon? Ngayon, naglagay sila ng pantambak, parang tatambakan yun, parang tatakpan lang nila. Nandun pa rin yung chemical. Siyempre, pag umulan, ma'am, bababa lang yung dinagay nilang pantambak. Kawawa naman yung mga bata.
Kasi una, yung zoning niya, makikita nyo naman, nalapit niya sa
Mga bayan.
community. Kasi pag heavy industrial na ganyan, at least 1 kilometer yung layo niya. 100 meter lang yata yung layo niya sa ano.
Pangamba namin, naririnig namin sa kwento-kwento, sa sinasabi nila, magraran pa, itataas daw yung bakod nila para daw yung ingay, di masyadong nakakapekto sa amin. Kumusta naman ma'am yung usok? Yung bang bakod na ilalagay nila, hanggang langit ba yon?
Despite na may violation, yung barangay, nag-issue pa rin siya ng barangay clearance, and yung municipal, nag-issue sila ng business permit, continuous, yearly. Actually, yung sinasabi nilang investment, yung epekto niya sa mga taga rito, wala namang empleyadong taga rito eh. Kaya wag nila sabihin na para sa mga taga baryo.
Dahil sa mga natuklasang ito, ayon sa NBI, patong-patong na reklamo ang kinakaharap ngayon ng kumpanya for alleged violations of several laws. Number 1, RA 6969 or the Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Waste Control Act. Number 2, PD 1586 or the Philippine Environmental Impacts Statement System. Number 3, RA 8749 or the Clean Air Act. Number 4, RA 12305 or the Philippine National Nuclear Energy Safety Act. And number 5, RA 7394 or the Consumer Act of the Philippines. Mr. President, sa testing ng Philippine Nuclear Research Institute or PNRI from July 18 to 24, may elevated radiation readings sa waste, lupa, tubig at production materials ng planta na masama sa kalusugan at maaaring magdulot ng cancer kapag significant ang exposure. Since 2020 pa operational na yung plantang yan. Ilang taon nang nandoon ang mga magagawa at expose ang komunidad. Kapag nagkasakit ang mga tao, several years from now, sino ang mananagot? Sorry na lang ba para sa kanila? Idagdag pa natin ang patong-patong na environmental violations ng planta. As early as 2023, may record na ang DNR, Environmental Management Bureau, na nag-ooperate ang planta ng walang valid wastewater discharge permit. Hindi pa malit na bagay ang kawalan ng wastewater discharge permit. Lalo ngayon, na-detect na may radioactive materials sa wastewater samples mula sa planta. Mr. President, kung noon pa hindi maayos ang treatment ng wastewater, hindi lang po ito problema sa loob ng facility. Sigurado, problema na ito sa buong community. Noong October 2025, may notice of violation na itong Chuangsing. Nakita na ng DNR EMB na wala itong valid permits para sa air pollution control installations at wastewater discharge. At gumagawa rin sila ng angle bars, C-channel bars at slag recycling kahit hindi ito covered ng kanilang Environmental Compliance Certificate o ECC. Siyempre, nangakong kumpanya na magkukumply sila. Pero pagdating na March 2026, wala pa rin ang required permits, kaya may notice of violation na naman. Dito ako nagtataka, Mr. President. Kung paulit-ulit ang violation, bakit pa-notice-notice lang? Bakit walang monitoring sa compliance? Ito nga po, July 2026 lang naglabas ang DNR ng cease and desist order. Kung hindi pa nag-grade ang NBI. At itong July 30 lang, DNR finally canceled their ECC. Of course, long overdue na. Ang hiling ngayon ng mga residente, wag na itong hayaang magbukas muli. At ang hiling ko naman, tanggalin na ang mga DNR officials na nagpalusot sa mga violations na ito ora mismo. This is a wake-up call for all of us. A red flag that there's something wrong with our policies. How was this facility allowed to operate there for years? Noong 2019, more than 71,000 square meters of agricultural land in Barangay Nabaling were reclassified for industrial use, citing employment, additional local income, and economic development. Pero ngayon, excuse me, sino ba talaga ang nakinabang sa conversion na ito? Approximately 170 meters lamang ang layo ng steel plant mula sa residential community. In the Philippines, the Comprehensive Land Use Plan recommends a 100-meter industrial residential buffer. Pero tingnan natin ang ibang bansa. Malaysia, 500 meters for heavy industry. Queensland, Australia, 500 meters for metal processing facilities. And Victoria, Australia, 500 meters to 1 kilometer for iron and steel production. Kung ganito kaingat ang ibang bansa sa paglalayo ng heavy industry sa mga komunidad, dapat ganun din po tayo kaseryoso sa assessment at planning bago magbigay ng approval. Kaya, kailangan na talaga natin ng National Land Use Act. I filed Senate Bill number 2293 para magkaroon na tayo ng mas malinaw na framework sa paggamit ng lupa. Hindi pwedeng economic benefits lang ang basihan. Dapat titingnan din natin kung magiging ligtas ba para sa mga tao sa kalikasan, sa ibang mga sektor at sa mga komunidad na mga apektuhan ang conversion ng lupa. Sa mga ganitong usapin, malaga rin ang papel ng local government sa pagbabantay sa mga negosyong pinapayagang mag-operate. Since 2020, patuloy na binibigyan ng business permit ang Chuangxing Steel kahit may mga reklamo ng mga residente. At matapos ang raid ng NBI, ayun, saka lang din sinuspindi ng LGU ang business permit nito. Isa pang nakabahala sa operations ng Chuangxing ay ang estado ng kanilang mga manggagawa. Authorities remove 347 Filipino workers and 37 Chinese nationals from Chuangxing's hazardous industrial conditions, with 10 workers examined showing symptoms of, eto na po, radiation exposure. Kawawa naman. Government inspections also documented wage and benefit violations, inadequate PPE, the lack of required occupational safety and health programs, lack of qualified safety personnel, and unsafe industrial equipment and operations. Ilan po sa mga manggagawa ng steel plant ay lumapit mismo sa aking opisina dahil sa poor and unsafe working conditions. Panoorin po natin ito.
Kami na lang po mag-a-adjust sa trabaho namin para hindi po kami madisgrasya.
Talagang wala kayong PPE, protective
Wala
gear.
po. Safety belt, akit ka sa taas. Bahala ka na. Gawaan paraan para hindi ka mahulog.
Yung kamay ko sumabit sa jacket dun sa may bandang crane. Ayun po, yung nangyari sa kamay ko, yung binibigyan ako ng 250 araw-araw, di nila binabayaran. Sa totoo lang po, mahirapan na po akong mag-apply sa ibang kumpanya, nangyari sa kamay ko. Ito, wala na to eh. Saka ito, balat na lang yung nag-ano nito, tapos lumilitaw yung buto.
Bali po pagpukpok ng kasama ko, tumalsik po yung kalahati ng lumasa na tipak po siya. Tumalsik po sa dibdib ko. Kaya po hanggang ngayon, nandito pa yung bakal, hindi pa po natatanggal.
Na kailangan operahan na.
Opo. Mag-isang taon na po ito. Wala naman po silang binibigay sa akin na tulong, ganyan.
Sa amin kasi ma'am, sobrang usok sa loob. Sa pwesto namin, halos wala kang makita. Kinukumpli nga namin sa bus namin, wala man nangyayari.
May mga mask po ba kayo
Wala po, wala silang ini-issue. Ganito lang po.
Ganyan.
Gaganyan mo lang. napakadelikado po kasi malikabok na, mausok, maingay. Kaya ito nabingi itong kabila kung tayo ngayon.
Yung mga barya kasi dyan, ninalo nilang pang panangkap yun. Halimbawa, pag nagkaka-low-carbon, ibig sabihin ng low-carbon, yung bakal masyadong malambot. Kasi pag dadaan ng finished product yun, magkakaroon ng mixture yun. Kaya maraming reject. Hinalo nila yung kumbaga pampatigas ng tunaw, yung katamtaman ng magandang kalabasan ng bakal.
Mga ano yan?
Yes po. May tag 5 piso, may piso, may 10, may 20. Nagulat kami. Siyempre, pera natin yan, malaking kabastusan yun eh.
Makikita po sa video na lumabag din sila sa PD 247 for willful defacing, mutilating, burning, or destroying of Philippine currency, including our peso coins. Ginagawa po nilang scrap metal ang ating kaperahan. Mr. President, the lessons from Chuang Sing in Magalang, Pampanga must guide us as we look to another major development, the PAX Silica project. PAX Silica is about 300 times bigger than Chuang Sing as far as size goes. And if we could not handle such a small company, paano pa itong malaking development? Investments, of course, are welcome, but transparency and accountability are non-negotiable. Maganda mga numero sa economic side ng PAX Silica. Around 600 billion pesos in project initial investments, 130,000 to 290,000 direct jobs, hundreds of thousands of indirect jobs, and potentially 68 to 75 billion pesos in annual tax revenues. But a project of this scale will also require significant resources, especially water. Some AI facilities abroad reportedly consume millions of gallons of water for cooling and other operations. To address this, the Basic Conversion and Development Authority, or BCDA, is looking at surface water harvesting and water impounding. However, bilang chairman ng Committee on Public Services, nakita na po natin sa ilang hearing kung gaano kaseryoso ang problema sa water supply, including in parts of Tarlac and Pampanga. Kaya bago tayo magdagdag ng isa pang major water consumer, kailangan malinaw saang manggagaling ang tubig. At kapag nagkulang supply, sino ang bibigyan ng priority? Napakarami pa rin pong tanong na kailangan sagutin. Ano ba talagang itatayo? Data centers? Semiconductor facilities? Ano ang magiging epekto nito sa environment, farmers, indigenous peoples, at mga residente sa paligid? At kung sasabing lilika ito ng libo-libong trabaho, anong klaseng trabaho ba ang mapupunta sa mga Pinoy? Estimates are not guarantees. Kung jobs, livelihood at government revenues ang ipinapangako, dapat malinaw na bahagi ng agreement ang mga commitment na yan. Kaya naghain po ako ng Senate Resolution number 571 calling for an inquiry into the proposed PAX Silica Hub in New Clark City to determine its environmental and community implications and whether our existing legal and regulatory safeguards are adequate. In closing, Mr. President, we have already seen in Magalang, Pampanga, what happens when regulatory enforcement comes too late. Development cannot simply be approved today and regulated after the damage appears tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, we can rebuild infrastructure and recover investments. But damage to our environment and our communities cannot simply be undone. With this, I ask for the support of my colleagues. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.
Maraming salamat po. What's the pleasure of Senator Risa, the gentle lady from Panay Island? Yes. Yes, we recognize the gentle lady from Panay Island, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Salamat Mr. President. Maikling manifestation lang ng pagsuporta sa privilege speech ni Senator Raffy. Nais ko pong suportahan ang kanyang privilege speech. Para sa impormasyon ng ating kapulungan, parehong subject po ito ng Senate Resolution number 588 na inihain ko rin po ngayong araw. Bukod po dun sa proposed Senate Resolution number 563, kaugnay naman ng PAX Silica. Pero para sa manifestasyong ito, Mr. President, mag-focus po ako dun sa binunyag ni Senator Raffy na steel plant. Hindi po isolated case yung ipinakita po niya. Earlier this year, ang PNRI, ang Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, ay nakahanap ng presensya ng uranium-238, thorium-232 at thorium-228 sa imported feedstock sa Philippine Sanja Steel Corporation na nasa loob ng isang special economic zone. Nakakabahala ito masyado, Mr. President. Bukod sa mga health at community impacts, nagpapalitaw po ito ng mga tanong tungkol sa kalidad ng mga steel bars na umiikot po sa ating market. Huwag din po nating kalimutan, nakatanggap po tayo ng impormasyon na yung teknolohiya na ginagamit para i-produce itong mga steel products ay naban na sa China 10 years ago pa. Hindi po talaga natin dapat payagan ang mga dayuhan na simpleng ilipat yung kanilang negosyo na pinagbabawal na sa kanilang bansa dito naman po sa ating bansa. Kaya muli po, Mr. President, sinusuportahan ko ang privilege speech ni Senator Raffy at sa pamamagitan ng ating mga Senate resolutions, isusulong ko rin po yung pagbunyag sa dapat malaman po ng publiko at ng ating buong gobyerno para mabigyang daan yung tamang policy action natin kaugnay ng mga ito. Salamat po, Mr. President, at mabuhay Senator Raffy.
Thank you. Ay papasalamat po kami kay Senator Raffy Tulfo sa kanyang expose dahil yung nakita ko dyan, ang nakakalungkot, 250 pesos a day ang binabayad ho nila sa kanilang mga manggagawa. At ang minimum wage po is 755 pesos. So 1/3 ang binabayad nila at napakadelikado po yung trabaho nila, makikita ho natin. Kaya kaagad ho i-refer ho natin to sa the appropriate committee para maimbestigahan at mapigilan yung mga ganitong hindi magandang gawain. We recognize Senator Erwin Tulfo.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's just a quick manifestation in support of the resolution filed by Senator Raffy pertaining to this Pax Silica. Maganda po yung layunin, nabasa ko po, ilang araw ko na pong inaaral. It will generate thousands of jobs. Siyempre, we will become a hub dito po sa artificial intelligence, dito po sa Southeast Asia. Pero Ginoong Pangulo, tulad pong nabanggit din ni Senator Raffy, na may mga kaakibat itong mga suliranin na dapat sigurong malinawan tayo kung ano ang dapat gawin ng iba't ibang ahensya. Una na po dyan, tama po yung tubig dahil gugugol po ito bilang cooling, maraming tubig po. Saan po kukuha ang BCDA ng tubig? Saan po manggagaling? Alam naman ho natin, wala namang malalaking lawa o dam dyan po sa Pampanga or sa Bulacan or Tarlac. Isa pa hong problema yung kuryente, Ginoong Pangulo. Problema ho ang kuryente, kailangan dapat din po masagot ito ng Department of Energy. Saan po kukuha ng kuryente at baka maapektuhan ang mga karatig na puok. Gayon din po yung tubig. Kailangan ho nating malaman, ipaliwanag sa atin ng BCDA o kung anong ahensya ang mga mahala dyan na magiging sapat po ang supply na hindi po maapektuhan ang pangangailangan sa kuryente at tubig ng mga kababayan natin sa lugar na yun. Sumusuporta po ako dito po sa Pax Silica, pero at the same time, bago ho nating yakapin ito at tanggapin, kailangan lang po nating maliwanagan. Ipaliwanag po sa atin ang pamahalaan ng ahensyang humahawak po sa mga ito, tulad po ng kuryente, tulad po ng tubig. Ayaw na ho nating matulad po na maraming beses na po na ang legislatura ay nagpasa ng mga batas na sablay. Isa po dyan yung All the Regulation Law, isa po dyan yung IPIRA Law, na sa halip na makinabang ang kababayan natin, iba po ang nakikinabang. Yun lamang po, Ginoong Pangulo, I support the resolution filed by Senator Raffy pertaining to this Pax Silica to investigate and get a clearer picture or idea from government agencies. How do we do this? Kasi marami pong nagrereklamo, even the local government units in Tarlac. The indigenous people are also afraid. We need to explain, these agencies have to explain to us where we will get the water and the electricity, Mr. President. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
At a later time, our majority leader will make the proper motion to refer the different resolutions. You ready to make the motion?
Just for this
Majority Leader?
privilege speech, Your Honor.
Okay.
And then we'll go through reference of
Yeah,
business.
the reference of business and also the resolutions on PAC Silica.
Yes, after the very
Yes.
important speech of Senator Pia.
Of course.
Before we'll do that speech
The
of Senator
reference,
Pia
yeah.
first, before the reference. Mr. President, I would prefer to commit the speech of our good gentleman and all the manifestations done by our colleagues to the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources and Climate Change.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the speech is so referred to the Committee on Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to recognize a distinguished colleague also for to avail of the privilege hour. May we recognize Senator
Pia
Pia
Cayetano.
Cayetano.
We recognize the gentle lady from Taguig City, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise on a matter of personal and collective privilege. Those of you who have been here for years will remember that every August I deliver a breastfeeding speech in celebration of the National Breastfeeding Month. Many of our colleagues are very supportive fathers of breastfeeding. And I start with this anecdote that when I first started delivering this speech, the older gentleman in the Senate thought it was funny. But the more enlightened younger gentlemen who grew up in the era of being supportive husbands, being more knowledgeable and involved fathers, recognize how important breastfeeding is. So for that, I thank all of my colleagues. The theme for the World Health Organization's 2026 World Breastfeeding Week is Breastfeeding for a Sustainable Start in Life. Strengthen what works. The message is clear. We must sustain and strengthen the policies, investments, and partnerships that make breastfeeding possible for every mother and child. Breastfeeding should not rest on the shoulders of mothers alone. It requires supportive policies, enabling workplaces, informed healthcare professionals, and communities that empower mothers to breastfeed successfully. I'll also mention, Mr. President, that when I had my first child, I did have a doctor who was supportive, but I had friends whose doctors would say, you can if you want, you don't have to. So wala man lang support, Mr. President, to really educate and raise the awareness for the mothers about the importance of breastfeeding. Tandaan nyo, nung time ko, wala namang internet, wala namang TikTok, wala namang Instagram na magkikwento sa amin. So if you don't buy your own books on the importance of breastfeeding, if you don't have a mother or a lola that will educate you, mahirap. And also during my time, my mother was a working mom na during her time, yun yung medyo naging hindi naman trend, but that's what the time that mothers started to work. This is the generation of my mother. So they were also encouraged na they can shorten their breastfeeding. Hindi pa uso ho nun yung mag-pump ka ng milk, dalhin mo sa opisina mo. Medyo doon na sa generation ko yung nag-umpisa. Kaya I mention this because so much work has been done by the communities, by the advocates to make breastfeeding a lifestyle. So we all know that breastfeeding is the simplest way to give a baby its first immunity and address malnutrition. Our colleague, Senator Bam, has sponsored this measure, and a big component of our national nutrition plan includes breastfeeding. It also has health benefits for the mothers, including reduced risk of developing breast and ovarian cancer. I'd also like to point out, given my advocacy for the Sustainable Development Goals, this is consistent with the following: SDG 2 on zero hunger, SDG 3 on good health and well-being, SDG 4 on quality education. Bakit? Sabi ng iba, bakit? Kasi nga, yung bata, kung healthy, and you will learn more in Senator Bam's bill, pag healthy siya as a newborn, as a toddler, as a preschooler, healthy siya because of the breastfeeding and the succeeding nutritional intervention, then makakapag-aral siya ng maayos. So yan ho yung mga connection dyan. Gender equality, which is SDG 5, SDG 10 on reduced inequalities, SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production. Bakit? Kasi hindi ka nabibili ng lata ng gatas. Magbe-breastfeed na lang. Wala ka nang itatapon, wala ka nang i-recycle. Gatas na ng ina yon. SDG 13 on climate action, SDG 17 on partnership for the goals. I want to discuss a little bit about the data. The latest 2025 DOST FNRI updating survey tells two stories. One is a story of progress. The other reminds us that too many mothers still face unnecessary barriers to breastfeeding. So we are moving in the right direction. Exclusive breastfeeding during the first 6 months, which is very crucial, has increased to 54.8%. This is an increase from 2023's 50.4%. So malaki na na-improve natin. 1993 was 29% only, and in 2003, 34%. So ngayon, we're at 54.8%. But that still tells us that something like 45% are not continually and exclusively breastfeeding. So marami pa tayong mga babies na mabibigyan pa ng more support, mothers na mabibigyan ng support. Beyond exclusive breastfeeding, we are also making gains. What does this mean? It means that meron pa rin nagbe-breastfeed after 6 months. 61% of Filipino children are still breastfed at 1 year, while 48.5% continue to breastfeed at 2 years. So this continues to give a lot of nutrients to our babies. And this is the highest ever recorded rate in more than a decade. So congratulations to DOH and to all the advocates. Yet there are still barriers. Exclusive breastfeeding is practiced by 66.1% of mothers in the poorest households. And yet, only 41% in the higher income bracket. Bakit kaya? This is most likely due not just to income, but the different circumstances faced by probably working mothers, the working conditions. Nakakapag-breastfeed ba sila pag nagtatrabaho sila? May oras ba sila mag-breastfeed? May support ba sila? Like I said, during my time, I was the first in my office, from my recollection, in my law office, to breastfeed. And I had all the support from my bosses, from my mother, who would even bring my daughter to the workplace so I could breastfeed pag hindi ko na kayang mag-pump. Anyway, regardless of socioeconomic background, every mother and child deserves this kind of support. Another important statistic, Mr. President, is the crucial first golden hour. Only 59.4% of newborns are put to breast within their first hour of life. So talagang dapat dito yung nakikita nyo sa movies na pagkapanganak, binibigay sa mommy, binibigay sa dibdib niya. A baby would naturally veer towards the breast of the mother. So if we do not make this possible, we are losing that opportunity for babies to have the best possible nutrition and to start a good habit. I would like to share some related activities. Here in the Senate, it has been more than 10 years, and it really just feels like 5 years ago, but 2014 pa, in partnership with the Senate Gender and Development Focal Point Group, we pushed for the establishment of a lactation room in the Senate. It has now been moved to the 5th floor, from the 5th floor and now to the 2nd floor. This is so important, dear colleagues, because we hear stories of women, young mothers who come to the Senate and say, uy, meron pala kayong lactation room, pwede pala akong mag-pump doon. And they're here for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours for hearings, and they're able to sustain their breastfeeding because of this lactation room. So thank you pa rin parate sa ating GAD Focal Point Group. Also, when I was a congresswoman for the 2nd District of Taguig, we also did the same in the House of Representatives. Meron pala akong request sa GAD office to please put signage in key areas of the Senate building, especially for outsiders, so that they would know when they arrive. Kasi nga dati, may sign tayo, kaya alam nga nung nag-a-attend ng hearing na meron tayong lactation room. So let's please do that. And that's my staff over there, si Elaine yan, di ba? That's Elaine yan, nag-a-avail siya. Lagyan nyo naman mga magazine. Lagyan nyo na rin ng Netflix. Anyway, because the most important thing, and this is in our law, is that it's a clean place, it's sanitary, there's a table, there's a chair, and there's a chilling facility to store the milk. So many of my female staff are proudly models for the working mom breastfeeding life. I'd like to take a little bit of credit that because I really supported my staff to be breastfeeding moms. It goes a long way. A lot of them breastfed all their babies for long periods of time. And I often see now, not just in my office, but more na nakasuot ng a cape or like a, what do you call it, like a robe that gives them some breastfeeding cover that gives them some privacy and they're able to work. Ang dami ko nakikitang ganun, kahit sa hearing, nakikita nyo sa background. I always think of Abby, my lawyer who was caught, not caught, but yeah, I'm proudly breastfeeding with privacy because of that. And my personal assistant also, si Claire, and then si Cherry. Through my Pinay in Action Advocacy Arms, we have seminars all over the country. I won't even mention where because it's really all over the country. Proudly, we were able to share the importance of breastfeeding. And I will just be submitting my entire speech for the record to go through the details of the history of the relevant laws. It started with an executive order, or known as the Philippine Milk Code, which prohibited the advertising, promotion, or sponsorship of breast milk substitute. Ito po yung dinatnan ko na napaka-importanting law, although this is just an executive order, but it has the strength of a law. Kasi at that time, namimigay po ng gatas ang mga milk companies sa hospitals. Inabot ko pa yung time na yon. And this is a deterrent to breastfeeding because a young mother is very vulnerable to just giving her baby milk from the can kung wala namang nagtuturo sa kanya ng importance and actually how to breastfeed. So this law is very important and I'm happy to know na now medyo strictly enforced na po ito. And then in 1992, the Rooming In and Breastfeeding Act of the late Senator Angara was enacted. Ito yung law na inabot na siguro ng mga young colleagues natin na pag nanganak yung wife nyo, their babies automatically brought to the mother, hindi na nakahiwalay. And then in 2006, I filed my first bill to promote breastfeeding in the country. This is the Breastfeeding Promotion Act of 2006. It was approved, but in the Senate only. So because it was not yet taken up in the House, I had to refile it again. And eventually it passed in 2009, the Expanded Breastfeeding Promotion Act. So, like I said, it established lactation centers, which I showed you pictures of. It also established lactation periods for nursing employees. So, karapatan ng employees to express their milk. I hope our colleagues are mindful of this and support the breastfeeding employees of the Senate. The law only allows 40 minutes. Sa totoo lang, kailangan more. So if we can be more generous with the time, kasi if you're going to be at work for 8 hours, you probably have to pump around 3 times. And how will you do that in 40 minutes divided by 3 times? Pinaka-minimum siguro is 20 minutes and you probably need more pa. So I ask us and even other employers listening to my speech to try to be supportive of nursing moms. I was able to work while doing this, making multi-use of my hands and still taking calls, calling my clients. So kaya naman po, sana maging supportive pa tayo. This law also integrated breastfeeding in breastfeeding education in the curricula, and it also designated August as Breastfeeding Awareness Month, hence this speech. After this was passed, years later, we passed the Kalusugan at Nutrisyon ng Mga Nanay Act in 2018, otherwise known as the First 1,000 Days. And then, in 2019, we passed one of the laws that I worked very hard for, the 105-day expanded maternity leave law. Because by expanding maternity leave, we also give mothers more time with their babies, more time to establish their milk supplies. I will end here, dear colleagues. I just want to emphasize that mothers still face the challenges of believing in the importance of breastfeeding dahil medyo aggressive talaga ang promotion ng milk in a can by many companies. So I ask that we continue to support the advocacy so that lalong ma-promote ang breastfeeding. And I also call on the companies to be aware that it is a mother's right to be fully informed and to be fully supported in her breastfeeding journey. At the national level, we continue to strengthen the capacity of our barangay health workers and barangay nutrition scholars. Maraming salamat sa kanila. Sila talaga yung on the ground na tumutulong sa mga kababayan natin. And at the local level, we should empower communities by establishing mother-to-mother support groups, expanding home visits by midwives, lactation specialists, barangay health workers, nutrition scholars to continue to promote awareness in the communities. But again, I'd like to emphasize in the workplace. A lot of mothers are the breadwinners, and it would be very sad if they could not breastfeed or continue their breastfeeding because the company they work for is not supportive of this, even though it is mandated. So on that note, I just want to add, what is also important is the establishment of milk banks around the country. Milk banks are like blood banks. May naka-ipon na milk, na breast milk for mothers who can't give their babies their own breast milk, and by law, we're supposed to have more milk banks across the country. I leave it at that, Mr. President. Maraming salamat sa mga colleagues na taon-taon nakikinig dito sa breastfeeding privilege speech, because it is very important for our families. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you very much,
President.
Senator Pia. And yung breastfeeding station is a very important and worthwhile GOD project. Alam naman natin na ang GOD fund is 5% of the total fund. So napakalaki po ang GOD fund every year. And minsan nga ho, yung mga projects ay hindi naman nararamdaman ng ating mga kababaihan. So itong breastfeeding station is really a project na hindi lang nararamdaman, nagagamit talaga. No? So hopefully we can look for more worthwhile projects to use our GOD fund. I think Senator Risa is raising her hands. We recognize Senator Risa for her intervention.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Maikling manifestation din lang ng pagsuporta dun sa paggunita ng Breastfeeding Month. At suporta sa main points na ni-raise sa privilege speech. At lalo na siguro timing ngayon na mayroong bagong itinalagang Health Secretary at bagong itinalagang Acting President CEO ng PhilHealth na pinagdiriwang ng marami sa atin, kung hindi man ng lahat. Maybe this is a good time to roll back yung statistics, very worrying statistics na sinight sa privilege speech na bumababa sa halip na tumataas yung breastfeeding practice among our people. Maybe in partnership with the new and aligned leadership sa DOH at sa PhilHealth. At lalo na, Mr. President, sa pagpapatupad ng binanggit ding first 1,000 days law na kung gaano ka importante, essential pa nga, really the first step in the right direction. Of course, after birth, after health during pregnancy, dun sa lifelong health ng bata, bukod pa sa nanay, dun sa full breastfeeding sa unang 6 na buwan ng buhay at sustained breastfeeding at least sa unang 2 taon ng buhay ng bata. So salamat po sa privilege speech. Salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Risa, for that intervention and statement of support. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to also congratulate Senator Pia Cayetano. As far as I can remember, I'm on my 13th year of being a senator, and we've known each other maybe 12 of those years or 11. Kasi 3 years po siya sa House. But when she was in the House, when she was in the Senate, magkasama ko kami dito. Every year, never fail po yan. Pag breastfeeding month, she stands up, first to stand and rise on a matter of collective and personal privilege to support breastfeeding month. And we'd like to congratulate her for that. It's a great advocacy. My children were all grew up on being breastfed by their mother. Mr. President, we'd like to refer the said speech to the Committee on Health and Demography and the Committee on Women, Mr. President.
So referred.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, our colleagues, with the indulgence of Senator Risa, our colleagues had asked if they can just do the interpellation, the party list reform bill tomorrow. We can take that, we can bump that up in the agenda, Mr. President.
Yes.
And then so we'd also like to proceed, which is very important. We have to proceed with the reference of business.
Correct. We have a lot of pending bills and
Pending bills and
resolutions.
resolutions. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Na ito. Pagdating ho sa LEDAC, hindi ho siya natanggal. Naglagay lang ho ng two segments. One para ho matapos by March of 2027. Yun yung first half of the bills. The second half of the bills will be June of 2027. Pero hindi naman ho sinasabi na strictly susundan yun. Kung mauuna po yung ibang mga bills, then well and good. No? Pero hindi ho siya in short, hindi ho siya natanggal sa LEDAC.
Mr. President, with that, let me thank you for taking it up yesterday. I'd like to thank the Majority Leader and our Chairman of Finance. Mr. President, alam ho natin, dahil ito po pinasa natin in record time, 17-0, alam ho natin gaano ito ka-importante, and I hope our colleagues in Congress will also feel the same way and pass this bill at the soonest possible time. Huwag na ho nating hintayin ng isa pang pagbaha. Maraming salamat, Mr. President. Thank you for always supporting and championing transparency in our budget process. Salamat po.
Rest assured na meron ho kaming commitment with our House counterparts of a regular meeting kasama po ang ating majority leader, and of course the different chairmen ng committees na mayroong topic na pag-uusapan. So we vowed to meet every other week para po yung mga bills ay gumalaw. With that in mind, Majority Leader, I think some of our colleagues would want to explain their votes.
Some more?
Some more or no more?
No
now?
more.
No more, now.
Mr. President.
All right. So we proceed to the next item on the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And we'd like to reiterate the message of the Senate President. Nag-meeting up po tayo, and we have some good news for Senator Bamakino we can discuss later on the side during maybe a minute.
Correct. We also have some good news kay Senator Rizzo on the Philippine Geriatric Hospital Bill, may breakthrough doon, and also with the AX Bill of Senator Erwin Tulfo.
Yes.
Pinag-usapan rin ho namin yung mga naging impasse doon. So we have some working concepts na binigay ko ho sa inyong dalawa.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And to continue our discussions on certain LEDAC measures, are we ready with the amendments for your bill, Lisa? May I just ask for a minute suspension, Your Honor?
Session suspended.
So we have an amendments for Senate Bill number 1511. I move that we take up and consider Senate Bill number 1511 under Committee Report number 15. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
This is an act strengthening the protection of patients against hospital detention on grounds of non-payment of hospital bills. Napakalaga po ito. This is a happy bill. As I always say, the measures of Senator Risa are happy bills and hopefully help our patients be rid of these type of hostage situations by hospitals, Mr. President. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Risa Ontiveros, to sponsor the measure and to make amendments. We have the following: the Senate President, Senator Pia Cayetano, Senator Joel Villanueva, and Senator Robin Hood Padilla. So again, may we recognize the sponsor. And would you like to make the amendments, Mr. President?
I'll just submit my amendments to...
we'll open the period of committee amendments first, Mr. President.
So we recognize a good sponsor,
Thank you very
Senator Risa Ontiveros, and to amend, these are committee amendments?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, we recognize the good sponsor, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Salamat po, Mr. President. These are the committee amendments for Senate Bill 1511, the Anti-Hospital Detention Act. So to reiterate the proposed amendment from the good Senate President, on page 3, line 22, after the word development, delete the colon and the phrase provided further that those patients who are partially recovered shall sign a waiver or undertaking that they are assuming the risk of the consequences for requesting for discharge despite having not fully recovered. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, amendments are carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now to reiterate the proposed amendment in response to Senator Pia Cayetano. Still on page 3, line 22. After the word development, insert the phrase, and the Department of Health provided further that in such cases, a guarantee letter from the Department of Social Welfare and Development, DSWD, or the Department of Health, DOH, sufficient to cover the amount due, shall be submitted in lieu of a promissory note. Provided finally that the DSWD and DOH, in coordination with relevant hospital authorities, shall issue guidelines defining the criteria for indigency, endorsement process, and documentation required to qualify under this exemption. Subject to style, I so move, Mr.
Is
President.
there any objection? Senator Pia?
Yes, Mr. President.
This was the
Intervention?
subject of a long discussion, so can I just have it in writing so I can follow?
Yes, will do, Mr. President. My legis will provide the good gentle lady a copy in writing.
Yes. Any objection to the amendment? You have to... okay. So we'll skip this amendment so that Senator Pia can review the amendment. So we'll skip that first and then we'll go back to that later on.
Yes, Mr. President. Moving on to amendments on page 4. This amendment, Mr. President, is from Senator Erwin Tulfo. If he prefers to read his amendment, I can yield the floor to him. So I'll proceed, Mr. President. Salamat kay Senator Erwin. On page 4, line 3, after the second word act, comma, add the phrase, except those properties primarily used for their livelihood. To wit, A mortgage over real or personal property of the patient, a relative, or a co-maker without the need of public auction. In accordance with Republic Act number 11057, otherwise known as the Personal Property Security Act, except those properties primarily used for their livelihood. I so move, Mr.
Is there
President.
any objection? Senator Pia has an objection or a comment?
Yeah, not an objection. I just want to understand. So the amendment is an exception. So for context, the section, the relevant section is section 2 that starts on page 3. The promissory note shall be secured by any or a combination of the following. Letter A, a mortgage over real or personal property of the patient, a relative, or a co-maker without need of a public auction. And then there's exception after that, right?
Yes, Mr. President. Oh, I'm sorry, unless Senator Erwin would like
Yeah,
to
anyone, I just want to understand.
answer this question. Yes,
So-
Mr. President, Senator Erwin would like to be recognized.
We recognize the
Thank you, Mr. President. To answer the query of the gentle lady from Taguig, that is correct. Properties or equipment that is being used for livelihood by the patient or relative of the patient should not be made as collateral.
Okay, so bawal.
Bawal.
So kahit gusto ng pasyente na gamitin yon, bawal. Hindi pwedeng tanggapin yon.
Kasi panghanap buhay niya yun.
Correct. So I'm just clarifying na yun yon. So kahit gusto pa nilang gawin, kung yun lang yung mabibigyan, it's our way of securing that itong essential for their survival hindi maialok as a parang gano'n na nga.
Actually, to clearly state under letter A mortgage over real or personal property of the patient, a relative or a co-maker without need of public auction in accordance with Republic Act number 11057, otherwise known as Personal Property Security Act, except those properties primarily used for their livelihood. But that is just for letter A.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand the basis for that amendment. I'm okay with it. No objection,
All right.
Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator Pia. Any objection? Hearing none, the amendment of the sponsor is carried.
Salamat po, Mr. President, at sa good gentle lady from Taguig and Pateros.
Yeah, okay. So-
And just for the
Sorry-
record,
sorry.
Mr. President, to add to the explanation made by the proponent of the amendment, ito pong amendment proposed ni Senator Erwin ay para siguruhin natin na kung may mga secondary properties na gagamitin ng pasyente o ng pamilya nila bilang collateral sa isang promissory note, hindi po tatanggapin bilang collateral yung mga pagmamay-ari na precisely ginagamit nila pangunahin sa paghahanap buhay. Kasi pag yun po pasailalim sa isang mortgage ay talagang baka mapilay na ang kakayahan nila na buhay ng kanilang
So
pamilya.
lalo silang
Mr.
lulubog.
President.
Lalo
Lalo pong lulubog. Opo,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. President.
President.
All right, so we're now on page 3.
We are still on page 4, Mr. President.
Mr.
Actually,
President,
that's page 3, go
yeah.
to page 4, but yes,
Yeah,
Senator
just to
Pia.
clarify, the majority floor leader was mouthing to me because he wasn't using the mic line by line. So I leave that up to the sponsor, and then I think that's what we're doing. That's fine.
Yeah.
But may I just put on record that I had reserved my right to interpolate when we went into the period of amendment. So bear with me lang po kasi as I said, this is my bill which we passed more than a decade ago, and that's why I was interpolating, clarifying some of the intentions before we go into amendment. It's okay with me, but I'm just saying bear with me because I may have questions as we go along. Yun lang naman po.
As a matter of process, we do line by line, page by page. So request the Secretariat to flash the bill so that we can all follow it. Yeah.
Yes, Mr. President.
Guests of Senator J.V. Ercito, officials from Maguindanao del Norte, headed by Governor Datu Tocao Ong Mastura, is with us here, Your Honor. And also, the governor is there, and the BTA Deputy Speaker Ishak Mastura is with us as well. We'd like to welcome our brothers and sisters from the BARM region to the Senate. We also have officials from Sipocot, Camarines Sur, led by Mayor Thomas Bocago.
19.
Is with us, guest of Senator Aquino. Guest of Senator Bam as well, Mayor Raymond Hala of Lobok, Bohol. Mayor Wilson Pajo of Pilar, Bohol, and Mayor Marciano Ayuban of Alicia, Bohol are all here in the gallery. We also have my guests, Mr. President, members of the Commission of Filipino Overseas. This is Miss Marie Linda Santos and Cheska Samaniego, together with youth leaders, U-Lead program participants, Joel Malang, Kim Carvajal, Diego Cloma, and Bea Correa. They are Filipino Canadians, Your Honors, that are here under the initiative of the Commission on Filipino Overseas to provide cultural immersion opportunities for Filipino youth overseas. We'd like to welcome them, Mr. President.
Welcome to the Philippine Senate, and I'd like to also welcome Governor Pacquiao. He's actually at the lounge. He'll join us later, of Sarangani. He'll join us later on. But we welcome our fellow public servants who are here with us today, and we welcome also our colleagues from the Commission on Filipinos Overseas. Welcome to the Philippine Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 7th session, Tuesday, August 11, 2026, and consider the same as approved. I so move.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, if I may.
Majority Leader,
yes.
let me just make a correction. We have 19 senators present.
Okay, 19.
Just to
Thank you,
place
Mr.
it on record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, also for the record, may I just be allowed to give a short manifestation?
Yes, the Majority Leader is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I was told today that during the testimony of Secretary Bonoan, that my name was dragged as the Senate President at the time when it came to allocables given to public politicians and legislators. For the record, Mr. President, and you know this, and many of our colleagues know this, all the senators know this, I never handled project lists. All requests were coursed through the Senate Finance Committee. For the record, as Senate President, I never requested, held, or handled any list of project requests from senators. Because the media is asking me this, and I want to put this on record. I refuse to handle any such list. Wala po dumaan na proposed budget amendments sa ating tanggapan. Alam na mga senador yan. Because whenever the senators would approach me and say, meron kaming mga request, I always tell them, pass it to the finance chair in the finance committee. Always. Lahat ng request are coursed to the Senate Committee on Finance na siyang tagapangasiwa ng budget process sa Senado. As a matter of fact, we did the same in the last budget, in this 2026 budget, Mr. President. We did it one step further. We adopted it on the floor with all the documentary requirements needed, from RDC to barangay hall request, barangay submission of barangay documents and agency requests. Dito natin ginawa for full transparency. So I'm doing this for full transparency, Mr. President. With that said, I see nothing wrong with making institutional amendments to support roads, bridges, airports, seaports. Yung airport namin sa Bukidnon, 10 years in the making. I'm unapologetic. I really worked hard for institutional amendments to be able to give Central Mindanao an airport, Mr. President. Everybody who's traveled to Bukidnon always complain to me, bakit 4-5 oras yung biyahe namin papunta ng Southern Bukidnon, papunta ng North Cotabato. With an airport now in Bukidnon, the travel time will be less than 30 minutes for these areas, Mr. President. As long as these requirements are requested and approved by implementing agencies, Mr. President, properly carried out and free from any interference driven by personal interest or corruption. Napakalaga po yan, Mr. President. Almost all legislators, and I want to put this out, almost all legislators, except maybe for Senator Ping Lacson and a few, from senators to members of the House of Representatives, introduce amendments to the budget. Everyone. Maybe all of us, whether it is education, whether it's military, PNP, Coast Guard, we introduce amendments, Mr. President. Or else, what are we here for? Aside from passing legislation, the budget passes us. We might as well just let the DBM just approve the budget, and then we'll just be a rubber stamp and no longer be able to help the advocacies that we are pushing for in the different agencies, whether it's culture, arts, education, PNP, public order and security, etc. So, Mr. President, even my idol, whose integrity is beyond reproach, the former Senate President Franklin Drilon, he used institutional amendments to make Iloilo the international mega city that it is today, without corruption, without any, I'd say, misappropriations. But look at Iloilo City. He's my idol. on how he was able to develop his own area through institutional amendments, Mr. President, and it is our responsibility to bring much needed development to communities that we have long left behind. Every time binabanatan po tayo. As a matter of fact, before Senator Raffy Tulfo became a senator, I remember in his program, he was still isumbong mo kay Tulfo. This was in 2018. Meron siyang complaint sa Valencia City, Bukidnon. May tulay daw doon na sira, kawayan at maraming nalulunod. Napanood ko po yun kasi nalabas sa social media yun. I did an institutional amendment here. We built the bridge. He can confirm that kasi I told him we built the bridge. We finished the bridge. There's no more complaints. That's not even my district. That is another district, Mr. President, but because of institutional amendments, we finished the bridge. We asked their team to verify it. So, I mean, we get bing-bang left and right from social media when there's a road to the barangays that's like a chocolate hill, so full of muddy, and you cannot walk through it. And they say, saan yung congressman? Saan yung senador nyo dyan? Tapos pag naglagay naman po tayo ng institutional amendment, babanatan tayo ng babanatan na corruption, di dapat pwede yun. As long as it is devoid of influence, Mr. President, by the legislator on the choosing, on contractor, on the kalokohans that happened there, as long as it is no corruption, it is transparent and requested by the agency, I don't see anything wrong, Mr. President. So again, I reiterate that there is nothing wrong with institutional amendments for as long as projects are properly implemented, that they are neither ghost projects nor substandard. Yan ang importante. Hindi po siya dapat ghost projects or substandard, Mr. President. And they are devoid of any influence from the proponent legislators that could lead to corruption. That is the statement I made to the media. I also reviewed the documents. I actually showed it to Senator Tito Soto on the testimony earlier of Secretary Manny Bonoan. It was a very simple testimony. He just talked about the process. That, you know, there's a budget in the GAA that the senators can request for amendments for their pet projects, whatever. He didn't even single me out as I'm the only one receiving the funds. It's very misleading. I think the word nowadays from our impeachment trial is the word misleading. So it is very misleading what some media outlets are doing by saying that I had control of 25 billion worth of budget. Mr. President, that is a lie. That is not true. As a matter of fact, all the members of the Congress, 19th Congress, know that whenever they approach me for projects, I say, wala akong pakialam dyan. Punta kayo sa Senate Finance and you apply there your amendments to the projects. Ever since my time in the Senate and in Congress, I've had no issues on public funds because I do not want to have anything to do with that, Mr. President, especially with the issues on corruption and public funds. I just want to put that on record very early on, Mr. President, so that at least for the benefit of the public, they know that, number one, we have nothing to do about that. I have no ghost projects. We have no substandard projects, at least in Bukidnon. And Mr. President, it is fully transparent. I am fully transparent on these projects. As a matter of fact, it's so transparent that last year, Mr. President, for the budget hearing, I brought in maybe a table full of documents and more documents in the back. Kompleto po. RDC requirement, RDC approval, municipal approval, barangay approval, agency approval with the program of works. Para sure na walang ghost, sure na walang substandard na project at sure na gagawin may accountability dun sa lugar na yan. I've been very careful of that, Mr. President. As a matter of fact, I'm one of those senators na if there's a mayor that asked me and we were able to put the institutional amendments, you can ask the mayors and I have a copy of the letter. I always put there that if there is anyone who transacts with you and asks for any SOP, please tell my office or the NBI and have him imprisoned. Nasa sulat mo namin yan sa mga LGUs who ask us for projects that we assist in institutional amendments, Mr. President. So with that said, I just want to put and allay any fears of people listening in. And my dear colleagues, what's important for me is, my dear colleagues, that wala po tayong hanky-panky na ginawa noon. I guess it's the pitfalls of leadership, Mr. President. You are now the Senate President. I'm sure many are approaching you and asking you for budget as well for next year. Not only congressmen or senators, pati mayors. Right now, we have a steady flow of mayors. I just had a steady flow of mayors in my office. They all gave me envelopes, a request for their folders, for their daycare centers, health centers, for their roads, for their classrooms. Di ba po, anong gagawin po namin? Anong gagawin po natin, Mr. President? So, we just want to put that on record. I think I spoke up with what maybe most of my colleagues have in their minds. I think ako na lang, nagsalita na lang ako for my colleagues. So, maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader. At tuwing nagkakaroon ho tayo ng budget, pumapasok tayo sa budget season at pinapakinggan ho natin yung budget ng iba't ibang hensya, marami ho tayong nalalaman na kailangan ho nila. At dito ho natin ginagawa yung mga amendments base po sa pangangailangan nila at base na rin po sa mga request nila. Dito rin ho natin nalalaman yung mga request ng mga LGUs. No? Dahil kagaya po ni Governor Pacquiao na nanggaling lang po sa isang malubhang earthquake. No? At marami ho silang mga tulay doon na nasira. No? Binilang ko nga kanina, halos 20 na bridges ang nasira. So kasama ho sa ating trabaho na tumulong at siguraduhin na yung ating mga ahensya at LGUs ay nabibigyan ng pansin yung kanilang pangangailangan. Pero ang ginawa ho natin last year sa tulong po ng ating mga kasamahan, itong mga proposals at amendments ay ginawa natin transparent. Kaya ho tumagal yung proseso natin last year dahil lahat po ng senador tumayo para po i-explain yung kanilang mga amendments at magbigay po ng mga supporting documents tulad po ng resolutions, tulad po ng program of work, tulad po ng mga requests from the agencies. In fact, hindi ko makakalimutan yung supporting documents ni Senator Raffy Tulfo na parang 10 boxes lata yun no, na tinignan ho namin yung mga program of work. At dahil ho doon, ay natutulungan natin yung mga LGUs. So, mga kasama, yan naman po ang isang direksyon ng ating bagong finance chair na itutuloy po yung mga naumpisahan ho nating mga transparency measures. Lahat po ng amendments in 2026 naka-upload ho yan sa website by senator, by request from agencies at pwede hong tignan ng ating mga kababayan itong mga in-amend nating items sa 2026 national budget. Even yung BICAM. Kaya ho yung BICAM umabot ho ng 1 linggo. Doon ho kasama ho natin si Senator Kiko Pangilinan dahil inisa-isa ho talaga yung mga amendments at pinakita ho saan nanggagaling po yung mga amendments. Si Senator Pierre was also there no, during the BICAM at naka-live stream in full view of our constituents. So itong mga naumpisahan ho natin ay yan po yung direction ng ating bagong finance chairman at tingin ko mas dadamihan pa ho niya yung mga transparency efforts para po mas lalong maging transparent at maintindihan ng ating mga kababayan. So Senator Pia, I think Senator Pia was raising her hands. We recognize the lady from Taguig and Patero, Senator Pia.
Actually,
Cayetano.
Mr. President, you basically said what I wanted to say. But I wanted to segundahan ko yung sinabi ninyong dalawa kasi kanina lumapit talaga ako kay Migs when I saw Senator Migs when I saw the news article. Nasabi ko, bakit malisyoso ang dating nito? Nasa kanya na yun to clarify anything, but by the mere fact that may mga projects that the senators are being asked to support in the budget is our job. So, like I said, sinabi mo yon na nandyan yung mga governors, nandyan yung mga from barangay captain, kung sana may CCTV tayo para pakita niyo yung dala ng mga, ano tawag doon, sabihin ko module, folder ng mga from barangay captain to mayors, governors, may dala ho yan kasi nagre-request po ng project. Then pag malaki, ang gagawin pa nga nila, iisa-isahin nila, sabihin nila na, Senator, ganito, phase 1 po kasi sa inyo, nahingi na ho namin kay ganito yung phase 2. Why do they do that? Because it is our job. It is in the Constitution. So, alam nila ngayon. Ngayon, none of us, I can speak, I guess I cannot speak for everyone now, but I'll speak for myself. We don't tolerate corruption here. But I also don't tolerate that there are insinuations that we're doing wrong when we make amendments that are called insertion. Tatawagin ng insertion, tapos may mali siya na. Whether that is the news outlets, people out there from within the Senate, I object to that. That is not fair because it is our job. Ngayon, kung meron kang ginawang malisyoso, di yun, take it up in the proper forum. Pero to just say na si Senator JV, gamitin ko Senator JV kasi okay lang sa kanya to, nag-insert ng ganito karami dun sa sa PhilHealth. Oh, ginagawa namin yan. Because it's our job. Ilang beses ako tumayo dito na, alam niyo yan, kasi kayo po ang chairman, na nilaban ko na ibalik, i-insert. Yes, that is the word insertion. Ibalik, i-insert yung pondo ng PhilHealth na hindi binibigay. So if I call it an amendment, it's okay. But if I call it an insertion, malisyoso yon, bawal yon. So that's what I'm saying. It is our job. So I thank the majority floor leader for standing up and sabi nga niya, ako na tumayo dito. Well, tumatayo din ako with you. Tumatayo din ako with you. And I never went to you for a project kasi nga tama. Alam ko na si finance chairman, that was Sani Angara at the time, then Senate President last year, and now JV, nasasabi mong, may room ba? May room ba tayo para sa more classrooms? May space ba na paghahanapan? Remember in our debate yesterday on no detention, di ba? I put on record na nagdagdag ako ng budget for zero balance billing. And then the Senate President properly reminded me na hindi lang para dun sa mga regional hospitals and LGUs, pati sa specialty hospitals. You reminded me. And then I even said nga na yung pilot project na I proudly, ako nag-initiate, ako talaga nag-insert nun. 1 billion for pilot project ng LGU Zero Balance kasi naaawa ako sa mga mayor na pinupuntahan sila ng mga pasyente na in-announce po Zero Balance. Ay, hindi kasi kami kakasama doon. So, maliit lang yung 1 billion, sobrang konti, but I put on record, it's a start. I could have asked you, because kayo, Mr. Senate President, ang chairman noon, sige na, lagyan mo to ng 10 billion because 10 is probably kulang sa dami ng LGU hospitals natin. But alam ko may hangganan, so sabi ko start ako 1 billion. Kaya sa next chairman natin ng Committee on Finance, abangan mo kasi pag nagamit ng maganda yung LGU zero balance budget na yon, baka doblehin ko, triplehin ko. At I'm sure papayag ka kasi full support din tayo sa bagong PhilHealth chairperson president, di ba? So ganun yun, that is the process. So thank you, Majority Floor Leader, for bringing this up. Sana nakadagdag lang tayo sa pagkakaintindi ng mga kababayan natin on what our jobs are. And again, no tolerance naman po tayo sa mga kasamaan at mga corruption naman dyan. We're just doing our job. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pia. At ina-assure natin ang publiko na pagpapatuloy natin yung ating transparency measures na yung mga requests, may request sa ahensya, may resolutions, mayroong mga plano, at lahat to i-upload ho natin sa website para makita ho ng ating mga kababayan. So we recognize Senator Raffy Tulfo and then Senator Robin Padilla and then Senator J.V. Ercito.
Kasi nga po, Mr. President, nabanggit ni Majority Leader, Floor Leader, Senator Mix Zubiri, yung pangalan ko. Totoo yun, may nagreklamo po sa akin way back tungkol dun sa problema sa bagong taas Valencia City, Bukidnon. Si Emmanuel Capul pumunta po sa programa ko all the way from Bukidnon to complain tungkol doon sa mataas na dike sa tabing ilog na umabot sa kabahayan at kalsada na umaapaw. Kasi ito yung hindi tinapos na project ng DPWH, biglang inabandona kasi nakatiwangwang lang. At maraming residente ang sobrang apektado doon sa problema ngayon. At nang inilapit ko nga po kay Senator Mig Zubiri, at that time, naayos po yung problema. Thank you, Senator Mix. Thank you.
We recognize Senator Robin Padilla.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pinunong mayorya. Sana lang po sa susunod, pag kami nagsulat ng ganyan, ituloy-tuloy nyo naman kasi nabanggit kami, pero hindi nabanggit na FLR yon for later release.
We recognize the chairman of the Finance Committee, Senator J.V. Ercito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to clarify also, and being the new chair of the Committee on Finance, I intend to continue the reforms that which the Senate President started when he was Committee on Finance chair. Of course, and also as an offshoot because of that, the biggest scandal ever to hit in history. There were safeguards that were put in place and belt tightening and so on. But we will continue with the transparency and in the reforms that you started. Of course, everything will be available online. As you, the BICAM will now be also be open. It will be an open BICAM, and we will also consult the civil society organization. So it will be a very open budget, and all the information that will be needed will be readily be available. This early, I already told our counterparts that we will not accept or allow insertions and amendments done in the BICAM. no? If ever it will be done here in open on the floor, on the amendment portions as we deliberate on the budget. So it will be allowed on floor, but during the BICAM, it will not be allowed anymore as you started, Mr. President. So be rest assured that we will make sure that the trust of the people we will regain the trust, no, because of the reforms that we have started last year with the budget here in the Senate. But again, it will be a balance. This early I will say that we need to strike a balance because the unintended consequence of that too much tightening and safeguards, no, that were instilled is that the economic progress, no, quite slowed down a bit because of the very slow public spending. So we really have to strike a balance. But be rest assured that transparency and the reforms will continue. And just like what the majority leader has said, no, there are Senator Pia and the rest, there are a lot of, it's part of our job as legislators to also to make amendments. So not all insertions or amendments they call it are bad. There are good amendments, in fact, no, especially for colleges, for state colleges, for health and other programs, no, that will really improve the quality of lives of our people. And just to give you an example, Senate President, one of our guests here, no, Governor Dato Tuca Mastura of the newly created Maguindanao del Norte. This is the first visit of the this is a historic visit because this is the visit when the newly created province, no, had their he's the governor of the newly created province, and I had the chance, Mr. President, to be the first national official to visit the newly created Maguindanao del Norte, and just the same. He came with the provincial admin, Dato Sharifuddin Mastura, Deputy Speaker, Attorney Ishar Mastura. And also, I just like to mention my classmate who I last saw in De La Salle, 1992, former Vice Governor Dustin Mastura is here also. He was the one, incidentally, Mr. President, who stood up and after the Ampatuan massacre, who fought the Ampatuans and won against them, no, as Vice Governor. So these people come from the very far-flung area of Maguindanao del Norte. Pupunta po sila dito sa Senado, may dala hong, halimbawa, may request po sila, parang ang hirap naman ho nating tamblahin o tanggihan, di ba? Kung ang dami hong lumalapit sa atin, I'm sure a lot of our colleagues can relate na napakarami, lalo na yung mga nanggaling sa yung wala hong direktang flight, pupunta rito, may mga request, para ang hirap naman na hindi ho natin pakikinggan at pagbibigyan kung pwede naman. Okay? And I think, I would agree that it's really part of the job, part of legislation, again, to improve our budget, and be rest assured that to my colleagues that although, of course, transparency will continue, reforms will continue, but of course, we have to make sure also that we serve our purpose. That is, if there are projects or programs that will really improve the quality of lives of our people, then that's part of our job. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator J. Versito. We recognize Senator Joel Villanueva and then Senator Bongo.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. I cannot help but associate myself to the statements made by our distinguished majority leader, our former Senate President, our Senate President himself, and Senator Pia, Senator Tulfo, Senator JV. Malicious is parang kulang po yung salitang malisyoso, Mr. President. A couple of days ago, si Senator Robin Hood at si Senator Bongo naman yung face of the day. Ngayon si Senator Migs. When we are just doing our job, I would like to put on record, Mr. President, that this representation worked very hard para dun sa budget noon sa cancer treatment center dun sa Philippine General Hospital. Ilang bilyon po yun na pinagtulong-tulungan po nating mga senador. Yung pong pagtayo ng e-library sa Bulacan State University, pinagtulong-tulungan po natin yun. Tinulungan nyo rin po ako noon dito sa Senado. Kanina po kasama namin dito si President Jamesnel ng BASI dito po sa San Rafael, Bulacan. Ikatlong building na yung itinatayo po doon sa Agricultural Center na yun. Last time, si Senator Kiko and I worked for the Bustos Dam. And unfortunately, kulang yung, wala na kaming makuhang pondo, kulang yung nagawa po namin. But we are working still to find more funds para i-finance ito. And that's the main reason why flooding is still a big problem in our beloved province. Tomorrow, I'll be visiting 11 towns, Mr. President. Lubog pa rin ho sa baha. And unfortunately, even, I'd be consistent with my advocacies in this same podium, Mr. President. Over and over again, since 2022, I've been talking about flood control. Nagpagawa po tayo ng feasibility study para po dun sa Bulacan. It took them 2 years, Mr. President. After 2 years, ask me if they were able to finish it. Yes, but are they implementing it? Hindi po. And, this is the main reason, Mr. President, that it pains me a lot as a legislator, as a member of this august chamber, na pag ginagawa mo yung trabaho mo, may isang malisyoso dyan na babatuhin ka ng putik, pero pag hindi ho nag-stick yung putik, hindi na sasabihin na tama naman pala yung ginawa mo, Mr. President. So, I'd like to associate myself again with our colleagues here. And I can assure you, Mr. President, when Senator Zubiri was our Senate President, lahat po tayo, Mr. President, kinakausap niya kung paano natin isakatuparan yung ating mga advocacies sa iba't ibang ahensya ng ating pamahalaan. Hindi lang po sa DPWH but in every single agency na dumadaan po dito sa ating institution. So I just want to put that on record, Mr. President, and I still would like to congratulate our colleagues for doing their job and making this country a better nation than before. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Joel. We recognize Senator Bongo.
Mr. President, I just want to manifest in relation to the testimony of Mr. Bonoan earlier in the Sandigan Bayan. Mahirap po mag-react sa isang issue na hindi natin alam anong pinagbabasihan at ano ang motibo. Marahil mas mabuting ibalik ang tanong sa nagbanggit nito. Base sa sinabi ni Mr. Bonoan, parte ito ng kanyang testimony sa Sandigan Bayan kung saan may hinaharap siyang kaso. Siya ang akusado, it would be best that he focuses his defense on proving his innocence rather than dragging our work as legislators into their mess. Dinamay pa nga kami ni Senator Robin. Una sa lahat, kung may ipinasang listahan ng isang undersecretary niya sa kanya ng mga proyektong galing daw sa opisina ng isang senador, anong listahan ba ang tinutukoy niya? Dahil sigurado po ako na wala naman tayong ipinasang listahan kay Yusek Bernardo. Gayunpaman, kaysa lagyan agad ng mali siya, natural naman na magkaroon ng koordinasyon at komunikasyon ang legislatura at ehekutibo, lalo na sa pagdating ng pagbantay ng tamang implementasyon ng mga proyekto. Halimbawa, simula nang naging senador ako, madalas ko pong kinakalampag ang mga departamento kapag may hinaing, request o report na nakakarating sa aking opisina, lalo na sa malalayong lugar na hindi pa tapos yung proyekto, kailangan ng mga completion, mas bibigyan sana natin ng prioridad ito to make it operational at magamit po ng ating mga kababayan. Kasama na dyan ang mga nagpa-follow up ng mga proyektong pang local development na hindi na-actionan at na-implementa ng maayos. Parte naman dyan parte ng mandato ng senador bilang representanteng pang-national, yan naman po ang ating trabaho, na tugunan kaagad ito at maparating sa tamang ahensya. At hanggang ngayon, marami pa rin pumipila sa aming opisina, hanggang ngayon, na humingi ng tulong, hindi pa nila nagagamit ito, kailangan tapusin, kailangan mapondohan. Sir, unahin nyo naman yung lugar namin, 4th class municipalities kami, tulungan nyo kami. Hanggang ngayon po, lalong-lalo na po ako, ang hirap po ng buhay ko dahil naging parte po ako ng previous administration, kailangan ko ng soft landing na mapaintindi sa kanila na hindi ko na po matutulungan gaya ng ginagawa natin ng mga nakaraang taon, nung 6 years po na sa previous administration ni Pangulong Duterte. Parte rin po ng trabaho natin na bantayan ang implementasyon ng mga batas na ating pinasa rito. Oversight function natin yon. Kasama na dyan ang national budget bawat taon, naglalaman rin po ng mga proyektong nasa ilalim ng DPWH. May mga tinatawag na continuing projects na kailangang mapondohan. Mayroon rin mga proyektong nasa GAA kung nung nakaraang taon na hanggang ngayon, yun nga po ang isa sa mga problema, no. Kami pa yung nadamay dito na sa totoo lamang po, kami yung less privileged dito. At alam naman po ng mga kasamahan natin yan for the past 3 years. na ako mismo, yung mga proyekto nga po na nabilong po dun sa FLR, yung for later release, at hindi nare-release yung pondo at hindi na umpisahan. Ibig sabihin yan, ako po yung kami, yung mga less privileged dito sa Senado, as early as 2023, yung mga proyekto ko po ay, yung mga amendments natin hindi pa nare-release dahil identified po ako sa nakaraang administrasyon. At ganoon naman talaga ang buhay. Sa anumang, unang-una po, sa anumang listahan na yan, pakiklaro lang po na napakaraming listahan talaga ng proyekto na dapat aksyonan ng DPWH sa ngayon. Pero hindi ito nangangahulugan na konektado po ito sa flood control o korupsyon. So bago lagyan ng kulay ang pagbanggit ng pangalan ko ni Senator Robin sa kanyang testimonya, bigyan sana ng tamang konteksto dahil mula noon hanggang ngayon, wala naman tayong ibang pakay kundi magtrabaho at magserbisyo lang po sa ating mga kababayan, lalong-lalo na po yung mga nangangailangan. At yung mga lugar na nangangailangan, yun talagang gusto nating unang matulungan. Ang aking pagrepresenta at pagbigay boses sa taong bayan ay mandato ko po. Hindi yan pangingialam o pag-iimpluwensya sa maling paraan sa trabaho ng iba, lalo na po sa ekotribo. Ulitin ko lang po, kami yung mga less privileged dito for the past 3 years. In fact, yung mga 2025, 2024 to 2026, hanggang ngayon po hindi na re-release yung mga proyekto. Kahit na yung iba po ay pinaghirapan natin, nung hinimay natin, Mr. President, during amendments, open naman po yan dito, yung mga amendments natin nung nakaraang budget deliberation ay dumaan po yan sa inyo, pinag-aralan natin, pinagsusian ng mabuti. At hanggang ngayon po yung iba ay hindi pa po na re-release at hindi pa napapakinabangan ng ating mga kababayan. Gayunpaman, hindi ito naging hadlang para ipaglaban kung ano ang tama at nararapat para sa taong bayan. Patuloy akong maninindigan laban sa anumang klase ng korupsyon. At tulad ninyo, hangad ko rin na magkaroon ng hustisya dito sa flood control scandal. Panagutin ang dapat managot na walang halong kulay o politika. Dapat lumabas at manaig ang katotohanan. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat, Senator Bongo.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Majority
Gusto ko
Leader.
lang banggitin na it was the legacy also of then Senate President Tito Soto. And myself, as he was the Senate President and I was the Majority Floor Leader, you were the Finance Chair.
Yes.
That was our legacy in the last year, Mr. President. And hopefully we can continue that legacy of transparency this year and the years to come, Mr. President.
Tama ho.
So-
At ang hindi lang ho maganda is yung nasabi niyo kanina na merong kausap na kontraktor.
Yes.
Yan ang magiging problema.
Opo.
Yan
Basta no
talaga.
influence. Walang influence.
Yan ang magiging problema talaga.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we just have to move forward on this and let's discuss now. We just have to approve on second reading the bill, the happy bill of Senator Risa Ontiveros before we take up the measure of Senator Bam really quickly. The parliamentary status, Mr. President, of Senate Bill number 1511 is we already closed the period of amendments and now
Ito ba yun?
I move, Mr. President, we resume consideration of the measure and approve its second reading today after the period of amendments yesterday. A clean copy of the bill was distributed to all the members so we can proceed with its approval, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Consideration of Senate Bill number 1511 under Committee Report number 15 is now in order.
I move to approve on second reading, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 1511 is approved on second reading.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader, mga kasama dito sa Senado.
Congratulations to the sponsor, Senator
Salamat
Risa
po.
Hontiveros.
Congratulations po.
Congratulations.
At least naipasa po natin yung bawal na mag-hostage ng pasyente.
Bawal ang palit ulo.
At
na
palit
ginagawa
ulo.
nila.
Diyos ko, isa pa yun. So, congratulations are in order to my senator colleagues, Senator Risa Ontiveros. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration on Senate Bill number 2272 under Committee Report number 71. This is the masustansyang pagkain para sa Batang Pinoy Act.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 2272 under Committee Report number 71 is now in order.
We recognize to sponsor the measure Senator Bam Aquino and to interpolate our distinguished colleague Senator Pia Cayetano.
Before I recognize Senator Pia Cayetano, let me recognize the presence of Governor Ruel Pacquiao, who is here with us. We visited him a few days after the earthquake in Sarangani. So welcome, Governor Pacquiao. So we recognize the gentle lady from Taguig Patero, Senator Pia Cayetano. And the sponsor, Senator Bamakino.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the kind permission of the sponsor, I would just like to ask a few clarificatory questions as I definitely intend to support this measure.
Gladly, Mr. President.
Thank you. So at the onset, let me put on record that I am the sponsor or ardent supporter of many of the laws that are referenced here in this measure. This is almost like a codification. So maybe I'll ask 2 or 3 questions and then His Honor can just elaborate. Thank you. So we note that the bill is called the Expanded National Nutrition Program, and it appears much more than a feeding program as it goes through all the stages of life and not just refers to feeding programs, because for the record, the last few years, and I read the sponsor's sponsorship speech, I also want to acknowledge the work of our former colleague, Senator Grace Poe, because she really was the one for many, many years who worked hard on amending, inserting into the budget. And talagang makulit siya kasi ako yung nag-handle ng budget ng health and then DepEd. And there are a lot of different agencies, as I'm sure His Honor knows, that are involved in nutrition. So meron sa nanay, DOH yan, tapos sa newborn, because of the breastfeeding, that's more of DOH, and so on and so forth, ECCD. And Grace would really intervene at every level to make sure that we have. So I just want to honor her also, because this was really one of her pet projects. And then I think Senator Alan has also reserved, because this is also one of his, he's a very staunch advocate of addressing stunting. So the first thing I mentioned is it is obviously more than just a feeding program. And the law, the bill dissects the different stages of life, because obviously yung needs ng mga bata changes, no, from the time they're in the womb. And let the record show that His Honor is allowing me to speak and just nodding his head. Thumbs up. I'll go now to the first point I want to raise. It refers to the use of and I need to find my notes, the UHR, Universal Health Record, is that correct? UHR, Universal Health Record, which I understand is introduced here. Again, I'll mention it because I know it is a passion project of Senator Allen. He has a bill that has a similar goal, which is the Universal Health Passport. So we note with support that this will now be created. But the first question we have is there a reason why we limit it to 0 to 5? Would His Honor be open to expanding? Because if it's meant to be comprehensive, why not?
Yes, Mr. President. Firstly, let me thank the gentle lady from Taguig for her comments. Clearly, ito pong panukala natin tries to really create a comprehensive support program for our youth. Hindi lang po siya nakafocus. Sanggol ay meron na pong suporta. And one is, Mr. President, is that even if we have a robust, our feeding program is not perfect, marami pa rin problema, but even if we had that, by the time they get to school, ay posible stunted na po yung mga bata. So, one feature of this bill, as the gentle out, is nabuo po talaga, no, from every stage of a child's life, ito pong support para sa nutrition. Now, yung nabanggit po, definitely, in fact, I think, Mr. President, there was no intention for the UHR to be 0 to 5. I think the intention is really to eventually marry that with the records in the schools. Okay. So that tuloy-tuloy po yung pag-monitor ng kanilang nutrition. And if there might be a need to amend to clarify that, we will clarify that, Mr. President, during the period of amendments.
Okay, perfect. And like I said, Senator Alan might want to officially make the amendment on that one. So I just want to put that on record already.
On that note, Mr. President, of course, the Minority Floor Leader and I have spoken already about this bill.
Okay.
And we will be doing our best to incorporate features of this anti-stunting bill here. And at the right time, we had actually asked him to propose amendments to incorporate these 2 measures, Mr. President.
Thank you. And then my next point doesn't need a reply because I'm sure His Honor will be supportive. But I read it and I'm quite comfortable that it does not in any way diminish the safeguards that we put in to preserve breastfeeding. Nakita ko naman dyan, it makes reference to the existing law, so we're good with
Yes,
that.
Mr. President.
We just want to put that on record to be sure that nobody tries to tinker with that, because yesterday I delivered my speech on breastfeeding, it being August Breastfeeding Month. So on record
Yes.
tayo dyan, no? We fully support.
And Mr. President, as far as I know, breast milk is still best for
Yes,
babies.
thank you. You are correct in knowing that. I do have quite a few clarifications on definitions. I might, I think I really do have some amendments, but to save time, I can just submit this just for clarity when we use certain terms here, no? And then the other thing I want to put on record is there are. So the terms I'm referring to that I'd like clarity on, or they may have to be defined, are new terms to me. But there are also terms that I see repeatedly, and I just want to be sure that they are aligned with other laws. It's something I worked on in the past, just so that, because now there's so many laws that are referenced here, that we want to be sure, like when we say adolescent, if that is already defined, what is an adolescent, nandiyan na po lahat yun. We don't need to go into details now. I think they all are, but I'll have my staff double check, and
Yes.
if we note anything with concern, we'll just let His Honor know.
We can do another check, Mr. President, with your team, and by the time we have this out on second reading, we will marry all of these definitions. As far as I know, Mr. President, we've used the existing definitions in previous laws, but of course, a second look might be warranted.
But what does it refer to? Okay. So, sorry, I'll go back to the UHR, because I recall that there is a similar provision in the UHC law, no, the Universal Healthcare Act. And that at the proper time, because His Honor said he is open, I think it might be a great opportunity for us to ensure that there's a seamless interoperability between the requirement in the use. Kasi sayang nandiyan na rin yun di ba?
Yes.
And if we can track them from birth, then great for all of us.
That is indeed the goal, Mr. President, of including the provision on UHR, that it marries all of our monitoring and tracking for children and babies, and even unto puberty, Mr. President.
Thank you. And then we note, and I believe that this is for practical implementation, that the feeding programs, of course, for the older kids are school-based, no? And then there's a specific provision on secondary beneficiaries. This is paragraph 7 of section 4, and that's on page 11. Sorry, page 12. And it says, subject to availability of funds, the DepEd shall extend SB.FP coverage to secondary beneficiaries, including children with disabilities, indigenous learners, etc., etc. So dun lang naman sa children of disabilities, I recall when I was handling the budget of DepEd, we specifically carved out the funding for SPED, because we really wanted to ensure that hindi yan nakukumingle, kasi the
Yes.
need is so high, hindi na nga malaki. Pag kinomingle mo pa, hindi mo na alam kung ano matitira, di ba? So, maybe this is something we can see if we can also, maybe not even be subject to availability of funds, because they say nga, di ba, the test of the progress of a nation is how they treat the most vulnerable.
Yes.
So medyo I have a soft spot for these kids. I did have a child with the special needs, and so lalo na pag wala kang pondo, and the experts can tell us, but a lot of these special needs or special need kids have dietary requirements naman talaga, and their symptoms or their condition can be alleviated when they follow the diet. So sometimes it's even just awareness. I'm not an expert here, but I've just been reading na, bawal pala talaga sa sugar yung mga ganitong klaseng bata, or bawal sa whatever. So just something to consider.
If I may, Mr. President,
yeah.
During the period of amendments, we can just delete subject to availability of funds if it makes it look like parang mabibigyan
Second
lang
thought,
kung pangalawang choice lang po. In fact, Mr. President, the Chairman of Finance earlier confirmed that I'll be handling the budget of DepEd. I know that the gentle lady from Taguig is also very active with regard to the budget for education. Yung isa pong nais po namin tutukan, yung pagpondo ng SPED.
Yes.
And whether it's this bill or in the GAA for 2027, we can work on making sure that there is enough resources, Mr. President, para sa mga children with special needs.
Yes.
Makita ho natin na tugma yung resources po natin dun sa dami at pangangailangan ng mga SPED children and SPED families po.
Thank you. And then this one is just an observation. We note with support. We note the fact that the objective of the bill is to source indigenous source of food to, number one, provide livelihood for whether they're the fisher folks, the farmers, and even to the dairy. So just a few observations which we'd like to share with His Honor. We support all of this, especially the provision that says at least 50% of the need shall be taken from the local farmers and fisher folks. We support that. Yun lang sa dairy, and again, I want to honor Senator Cynthia Villar because this was her passion. Dairy, love na love niya talaga tong dairy na to. I'm not the expert, but sadly, I know for a fact that hindi kinakaya talaga yung production. We really don't have enough. And even if we continue to improve, and I know we have our own experts now, Senator Pangilinan, Senator Camille is also interested in this. Even if we fast track it, malayo pa, no? But I also recall when I asked, it's not just the supply. Even if you're in an area that has a supply, it's the delivery and what do you call it?
The handling.
The handling.
Yes.
Ang dali daw talagang masira. So,
Yes.
Again, I don't think you even have to go into details in the bill, but if there's something that you can get from experts on how, because aasahan natin yon, lalagay tayo ng pondo doon. I mean, precisely for this, and it's great, but because we've tried, and I'm not saying give up, no way. Pero what do we do? Maybe there can be maybe you can discuss that now or later on.
Mr. President, if I may, there are these are two separate issues, both of which we have consulted with Senator Pangilinan on. Yung una po kasi is with regard to fresh and hot meals.
Yes,
no?
yes.
So ang gold standard po sa feeding program ay hot meals po talaga. No? Unang-una,
Yes,
mas
yes.
gusto ng mga bata,
Yes.
mas
Of
masustansya,
course.
galing sa mga local produce, natutulungan yung mga lokal na magsasaka.
Yes.
But as of today, Mr. President, only 4.3% of our feeding is through hot meals. Yung combination of hot meal tsaka yung nutritious food or yung mga Nutriban type is 13%, and then yung purely nutritious food or Nutriban type is at 82%. No? So yung karamihan po talaga ng feeding program to date are these prepackaged nutritious food, Nutriban, fortified chichirya. Na honestly, Mr. President, hindi talaga ito yung gold standard. No? Yung gusto talaga natin, hot meals. So in the bill, although Senator Pangilinan and I were talking earlier that we might have to change the language, we just want to emphasize that if we can source locally, we should.
Of course.
If we can support the LGUs with their feeding programs, we
will.
should.
Yes.
Pero in all areas na hindi talaga kaya or hindi pa kaya, dapat meron pa rin. Meron pa rin nakukuha yung mga bata.
Of course
And if
naman.
the language isn't that clear, we can work on the language later on, Mr. President, during the period of amendment. So I want to make that clear. Ang goal natin, hot meals, locally produced, at kung saan kaya, kayanin natin. Pero everywhere else na hindi kaya, the students, the kids should still be able to receive something. Now, pagdating naman po sa gatas, isa rin po itong matagal rin ho namin na pag-usapan ni Senator Pangilinan. During the budget deliberations, Mr. President, we will have the NDA kasi ang laki po ng dinagdag po natin for 2026. So we will expect that the NDA, the National Dairy Authority, will give their update ngayong pag-uusapan po yung budget, kung ano po yung kinaya nila. Now, the language is similar. Kapag fresh, yun yung nais natin. We want to help our local industry. We want to give fresh milk to our students and to our children hanggat kaya.
Yeah.
Now, kung hindi kaya, may mga language naman po na where practicable, where feasible. But the idea, Mr. President, is that every single child should have nutritious food. Every single child should have some form of milk. The gold standard is hot meals and fresh milk. And everywhere else, Mr. President, kakayanin natin ang substitutes. And I think that's pretty clear right now in the bill, Mr. President. Mr. President, may Senator Pangilinan be recognized?
We recognize Mr. Kiko Pangilinan.
Thank you. With the permission of the two colleagues, just on the 2 points, on the matter of purchases directly for farmers and fisherfolk, and the small percentage, about 4% are hot meals. I think one major factor is precisely because the availability of the supply, because of the inability of farmers to to provide the necessary harvests and the necessary economies of scale. In other words, yung capacity ng farmers. And that's why we believe now that the purchases will be made locally, this now becomes an incentive for our farmers to plan their planting season and their harvests. Their fear in many cases, because it's fresh produce, is that they may plant, but walang bibili. Therefore, nabubulukan sila. Or kung bibilin, barat. But precisely because it's now localized and schools will now be purchasing directly and may assured market, yung ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda, eh, maingganyo talaga silang magtanim, number one. So that's why I think chicken and egg siya. 4% mababa because the supply is not available. And what happens, and I understand this, ang nangyayari sa mga feeding programs ay centralized. Dadalhin pa sa regional level. So talagang hindi pa pwede yung fresh produce. Hindi mangyayari yun. Pero unti-unti, habang meron ng ready market ang ating mga magsasaka, magtatanim na sila, alam nilang hindi sila babaratin, gaganda yung supply chain requirements. And the second one is the milk. It is correct na it has been a challenge to provide fresh milk. And maybe during the period of amendments, because during the debates on the budget of the Philippine Carabao Center, we asked them about producing powdered milk to supply the hard-to-reach areas where hindi na pwede yung fresh milk. And when we were in Nueva Ecija a few months ago, they presented to us their new product of powdered milk, powdered Carabao's milk. So that too should be part of the intervention where fresh milk, because of packaging, handling, may not be available readily in far-flung areas. Then the powdered milk, Carabao's milk, will be more easily available and better handling, easily handled, and mas mahaba ang shelf life. And therefore, the last mile of feeding programs, milk feeding programs, will likewise be addressed.
Mr. President, on that note, we'd like to thank Senator Pangilinan for his interjection. Dalawang puntos, Mr. President. Unang-una, yung isang barrier ng mga magsasaka, yung pagsama sa procurement process. So yung Sagip-Saka Act ni Senator Pangilinan na matagal na niyang sinusulong, hopefully will allow for more local farmers to be part of the process. No? Pangalawa, Mr. President, naglagay tayo ng provision na kung ang isang local government ay meron ng feeding program and that they're capable, and we know of, like Valenzuela, of course, we know of areas where the feeding program is award-winning and functioning, pwede na po talagang i-carve out yung budget at ibigay na lang sa LGU na sila na magpatupad ng feeding program, Mr. President, because they're already spending. No? So, kumbaga, dagdagan natin yung pondo nila, gawa po ng national budget na para sa feeding program, at yung mga LGUs mas may kakayahan to procure from the farmers, to provide hot meals, and to have a better feeding program in general, Mr. President. So, in the bill, nilagay po natin yung iba't ibang modality. Kasi nakita ho natin na different areas are at different stages of progress and development with regard to the feeding program. Kailangan saklaw natin yung matagal nang gumagawa ng feeding program or award-winning na sila. Meron na naman yung mga lugar na bago pa lang at hindi pa kaya. And hopefully, Mr. President, this bill will be expansive and comprehensive enough to support all the different modalities, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you to the two gentlemen. Just to add to this discussion, yung Sagip-Saka law ni Senator Pangilinan, we also discussed that extensively during the previous budgets and the previous because the feeding program was discussed in the budgets. No? So we want you to know that we very much cognizant of that. And I'd like to tell the sponsor that I have no issue with how it was presented in the bill, yung mga options, they're all there. Talagang yung issue natin is the implementation. So
Yes.
lahat din ng sinabi ni Senator Pangilinan, okay din ako lahat doon. It's really the implementation. So what I want to share with the two gentlemen is that these are issues that the legislators of the previous Congress were aware of. We would discuss it because remember, I would have to look at the budget, and every year gusto nung proponents, which is sila Senator Grace, na dagdagan yan. And then we have to see kamusta utilization. And it started out quite low kasi nga in the beginning, ang hirap to put together the project, no? And it continues to hound us. So it's not the laws that we passed, and it's not this new law because it's already written quite well, very well. It's really the implementation. So that's where it is. That's really where it is. You're right, it's a procurement. But when Senator Pangilinan says kasi na you want to ensure that the farmers know that they have a market, I need to tell you that we've been trying. I mean, I don't get involved, but when I listen to the reports before the following year, because nga isasama ko ulit sa budget, parang it's not naman for lack of trying, or maybe they're really not trying hard enough, or maybe you can have more pilot project that really shows where it work. And I'll end lang with one quick example. I want to hear PTAs getting involved, because I feel this letter C, which is other community-based feeding modalities, might, to me, that would be the most effective kasi ito yung hindi centralized. Ito yung sila-sila. So anyway, that's just my sharing with you what we've been trying to do the past years.
Mr. President, ako po, I agree with you completely, Mr. President, but it's really come to a point where we need the political will to try and push for reforms that haven't been done before.
Agree.
Yung pagbili po sa local, napakarami na pong batas ang nakalagay, bumili sa MSME, bumili sa local, hindi pa rin napapatupad.
Exactly.
And we need the political will to say, we're willing to change the rules, which is our job. We're willing to change some laws, allow for it legally. But the implementers also need to push for it with as much passion as we have shown in reforming the laws. Because Mr. President, tama ho kayo, kung di po mai-implement ng naaayon, hindi rin po ito magagawa. And later, Mr. President, or on Monday, sa privilege speech po natin, pag-uusapan rin natin yung pagbuo ng classrooms na pinondohan nga po ng Senado, napakaraming magandang ideya, pero until today, hindi pa rin nakakabuo ng mga classrooms in 2026. So we need to have that political will and the willingness to really just go for it, no? Kung may isang strategy na ito yung pinakamainam, pinakamakapag-bibigay ng resulta, gawin natin. Kahit may mga ibang balakid, kahit may mga ibang kumukontra, ituloy lang natin kasi ito yung kailangan eh. 'Di ba, Mr. President? And I share that frustration na may mga panukala tayo, maganda, napondohan pa, hindi naman to napapatupad ng maayos. And that's our job, Mr. President. May oversight rin tayo. And I invite the gentle lady from Taguig during the deliberations for the budget, which will be in a few weeks. Yun po yung pinakamainam na panahon na tingnan natin yung mga implementation at itulak mo natin na gawin yung nararapat, gawin maybe hindi ito yung nakagisnan, yung sagip-saka. It's such a big change from our usual centralized, very formal type of procurement. Pero alam natin, ito yung kailangan para mabigyan ng tulong yung mga magsasaka. So we just need to push it, Mr. President. And we can't do it alone. We need, of course, the executive with us. Pero palagi ko naman, Mr. President, kung nagkakaisa tayo sa pag-push ng implementation ng political will, I hope, Mr. President, hindi tayo magsasawa sa kakatulak ng mga reformang ito. And I have high hopes for this bill, Mr. President. The EDCOM, si ED Carol is here behind me. We've been pushing for this for so long, from the time that SP Sherwin was the head of EDCOM. Of course, we've always had members of the minority in the EDCOM as well. We just need to really work together to push this, Mr. President, at huwag tayong tumigil hanggang yung mga reforma maramdaman nga ng mga kabataan natin, Mr. President.
Yeah, my last point on that would simply be maybe we can showcase and really highlight the successful programs kasi alam mo naman ng Pilipino kami rin, kaya din namin yan. Or if we can even have between DepEd and we can ask our former colleague, Senator Sunny, to have a reward system, little things that really show. Kasi I feel so bad when I have to see on international forums or international shows na exactly itong programs naman na na-envision na natin na nandyan na nakaplan siya. And I'm sure it's happening in some places, but it's like, wow, these people found the magic solution. They borrow from the farmers to feed the people. I'm like, like we're doing that. It's just not happening at the level siguro that we want it to happen. But sometimes these things, tipping point lang yan. It's just a matter of, we put all our resources together and we have been. But my last point, Mr. Sponsor, is on the budget, no? Our 2026 budget, which included amendments, okay, I will repeat, amendments, insertions.
Yes, huge amendments for feeding
lahat ng supporters
and
natin
classrooms
was 24.70 billion. Yeah, this is school-based
Yes.
feeding programs. This year is just 11.43. So alam na natin yan, tayo magdadagdag dyan. Okay?
Yes.
So then again, and because this was the topic of the day, ba't nagdagdag? Senado nagdagdag ng, even if we just plan to match it, nagdagdag ng 13 billion, nagdagdag ng 13 billion. O sige,
Mr.
sino kasama dyan? Ako magtatas ako ng kamay because I'm proud
Mr. President,
to include this. Yes.
I hope we will have the biggest amendment for the budget for education, just like we did last year. Last year, Mr. President, ang laki ng dinagdag natin sa school-based feeding program. Sa classrooms, aabot yun ng, if I'm not mistaken, more than 50 billion pesos just for those two items. Iba pa po yung sa free college law, iba pa yung scholarships, no? Iba pa yung subsidies. For this year, and this is actually my privilege speech, Mr. President, later, we're at 3.5% of GDP. Last year po, lumampas ang budget ng education ng 4%. We're back to 3.5%. And I'm hoping we can all come together to bring it back to the prescribed 4%. Di ko pa po nako-compute kung ilang billion po yon. But we know the budget for this year, mas mababa yung classroom, mas mababa yung feeding program, mas mababa yung, actually sa higher ed, meron rin yata, no? Or we're still studying it, Mr. President, pero definitely at the right and proper time, we will move to increase the budget of education para maabot ulit po natin yung 4% of GDP na siyang nararapat na pagpondo ng edukasyon po sa isang bansa gaya po natin.
That is correct. That's the minimum standard actually that is recommended to address the needs, no? To even just be at par, not even to be great. So definitely, I would like to support that in any way I can. But anyway, just to end this point on the budget. So if for 2026, as I mentioned, ang budget natin for the school-based feeding program is 24.70 billion, and this is intended to feed up to grade 1, so kinder up to grade 1.
Universal kinder and grade 1
Yes.
for the first time in our history, Mr. President.
Yes.
The bill, if it becomes a law, actually is universal K to grade 3.
3, yes. I'm
So-
getting to that point.
Yes, Mr.
So
President.
I'm saying that in 2026, it was 200 days up to grade 1. And again, to give credit where credit is due, it takes a while Like, walang magsasabi na yung previous Congress ayaw naman gawin to. Pero it takes a while to convince everybody to pull it together. So if you recall, smaller group pa yan. I maybe when I do my amendments, I'll put on record the number, much smaller, but every year, dinagdagan naman din ang dinagdagan. So my point is, for 2026, 200 days up to grade 1. And as His Honor correctly pointed, this law now says na up to grade 3 tayo. Kaya lang yung budget nga, 11.43. So, hindi on board ang executive with this. No? And this is where it's fun for us to disagree because who's not going to want to support a feeding program? But definitely, bringing it back to 24.70 won't be enough because the 24.70 only covered up to grade 1. So I don't know what that number is, but because this is happening during the time of this bill is being sponsored and defended at the time that we're about to start the budget, there's a lot of hope that you will be able to convince our colleagues because we're taking it up during that time. So maririndi sila na makinig sa inyo, Mr. Sponsor. As everybody interpolates, they'll keep hearing this na for the first time, hanggang grade 3 tayo, kailangan dagdagan yung budget. So you have a good chance of making this happen. And I support, of course.
I'm sure, Mr. President, with the leadership of our Senate President, we will, and our Chairman of Finance, we will reach these numbers. But sa aming pong computation, actually this is EDCOM's computation, I think we need 39.7 billion to fully implement this law.
Yeah.
It's a big amount, Mr. President. But lahat ng mga problema po natin, we talk about the education crisis, we talk about the learning gap, marami ho dyan, mariresolba kung may lamanan siya ng mga bata.
Exactly.
Even our learning gap. In fact, I would even say this is one of the best solutions to address our learning gap is may laman yun siya ng mga bata. And I know you've been saying this for a long time, gentle lady from Taguig, your brother as well, yung stunting issues natin. Kung mapondohan po natin to at ma-implement ng maayos, we're actually taking the biggest bite out of our education crisis. And to be fair, Mr. President, last year, Senator Sherwin was the chairman of finance. Ang lalaki po ng mga changes na pinropose sa education and there wasn't much debate. He had supported that right away because he's also an education champion. Yung malaki pong pagpondo sa classroom, sa school-based feeding program, agad-agad po itong nadagdagan. We'll know in the next few weeks about the implementation and the utilization. But I'm hoping, Mr. President, we can aim for what we had this year and even higher, and really start the process of rebuilding our education sector, Mr. President. Kailangan natin ng tamang reforma, tamang pagpondo, at tamang implementasyon.
And the proper foundations, which is what this is. So my last point, Mr. President, is interestingly, the first 3 sustainable development goals are all connected to this. And that's why yung bill nyo, I like it kasi it really incorporates the sustainable development goals. But I'll just mention the top 3. Number 1 is no poverty. And we know that that's the biggest deterrent also to having a proper education and having a good life and having food in your tummy. Number 2 is zero hunger. And number 3 is good health. So those 3 are well incorporated in this bill, and that's why we're very happy that it's a comprehensive measure. So I can end here. I have a few more clarifications. I can just submit it to His Honor, and then I have, again, very simple amendments just for more for clarity, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'd like to thank the gentle lady from Taguig. Maraming salamat po. Not only for this measure, but for the years of support for the education sector. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat po. Just to join in the conversation, roughly we increased the education budget by about 287 billion pesos. And that's cut across the 3 education agencies, DepEd, TESDA, and CHED. And for the feeding program, we increased it by 16 billion to 28 billion pesos this year. That covers universal for kindergarten, grade 1, and then targeted for the others until grade 6. Kaya malaki po yung improvement ng education budget for 2026. Sa tulong po ng lahat, tulong po ng ating mga kasamahan. At yan naman yung ating goal for this year. Hindi ma-maintain, but ma-increase pa natin. No? So
Thank you.
we'll try
Thank you,
very
Mr.
hard
President.
to increase it this coming 2027 budget.
Mr. President.
Yes, we recognize Senator
With the
Kiko
permission
Padilla.
of Senator Baum, the sponsor, I just want to put on record earlier, and I agree fully with what Senator Cayetano mentioned about implementation. The Sagip-Saka law actually was enacted in 2019. But believe it or not, the GPPB resolution that would cover all these purchases was left hanging for 3 years. And it was only when I sat last year that they finally resolved the issues between the Department of Agriculture and the GPPB, the board. And they came up with the final resolution in November of 2025, which explains why it was haphazardly, or if at all, implemented. But thankfully, today, we are now seeing the fruits of the resolution now put in place. You do have farmers and fisherfolk organizations who are selling anywhere between 52 million worth of rice purchased, for example, by the Quezon City government, 13 million purchased by the hospitals in Region 10, BJMP purchasing also about 13 to 15 million directly for their programs for their persons deprived of liberty. So slowly, and the food budget of the Philippine government last year was about rice, feeding programs, calamity relief. It was about 177 billion. So really, if you put the implementation in place, walang dahilan para maging mahirap yung ating mga magsasaka at mangingisda sa dami ng binibili ng pagkain ng gobyerno kung tamang napupunta nga doon sa mga suporta sa mga markets na gustong ma-access din ng ating farmers and fisherfolk. But again, implementation is key.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Majority Leader, we suspend consideration. I think the Minority Leader would want to interpolate as well next week.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, yes, to allow our distinguished minority floor leader to propound some questions, we move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the aforementioned bill is hereby suspended.
Yes, Mr. President, just a quick manifestation on the election of members. I got a list already of the members of the minority to be elected in certain positions. I also got to speak to the minority floor leader. He's not feeling too well today, so he begged off from today's session, but we had an agreement that the membership will be forthcoming for certain committees. We have 5 now. May I ask maybe the Deputy Minority Leader to read the list?
So we recognize the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Amy Marcos.
And then just a quick manifestation, Mr. President. We decided about it earlier today that the majority of the members naman have been already elected, every committee. And there are 2 members of the minority, which is the Minority Floor Leader, and the Deputy Minority Floor Leader, which is ex-official. That is Senator Cayetano, who's the Minority Leader, and Senator Amy Marcos, who's the Deputy Minority Leader. If there's still vacancies on the minority, it does not prevent you from conducting committee hearings,
Yes.
and even coming up with the committee report. With the permission and understanding that the minority leader has to sign. That's usually our quid pro quo. We have also an understanding with the minority leader. I've had that understanding since the father of Senator Coco Pimentel, Senator Aquilino, Nene Pimentel, and then it was Senator Coco Pimentel, Senator Frank Drilon, who was also minority floor leader. That has been our agreement that we have to have the minority leader sign off the committee reports. So we guarantee the minority that we'll make sure that all the committee reports will go through the minority floor leader and the deputy minority floor leader while we're still waiting for the elections of their members on certain committees. We'd like to put that on record, Your Honor.
Well, the reason why we are waiting for the committees to be fully constituted is to give respect to the minority members so that they can read the committee report, they can make comments to the committee report, and even ultimately sign the committee report.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have 10 committee reports which are pending right now. So we cannot bring it to the floor until the majority of the committee members will sign the committee report. So with that understanding, the majority leader, that the minority leader, the deputy minority leader is already sufficient to file the committee report, then we will start routing the 10 committee reports so that the chairman can sponsor it on the floor and we can tackle it.
As long as the minority leader signs off the document, Mr.
Besides majority leader, the minority members will have an opportunity to debate, to interpolate, to amend, to even vote on it or vote for it or vote against it, depending on the debates and the issue. So
Yes,
we will have that opportunity in plenary.
And I'll work with the minority floor leader on the memberships in the succeeding days.
Yes, with that understanding, then we will proceed with the election of the members of the different committees.
May we recognize the deputy minority floor leader?
We recognize the gentle lady from Ilocos Norte, Senator Amy Marcos.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and Majority Leader. I'd like to read out the members of the different committees. We start with Civil Service, Government, Reorganization, and Professional Regulation. The 9 members constitute said committee, with 4 minority members being Senator Legarda, the chairperson, myself as Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Bongo as Vice Chair, and Senator Pia Cayetano. So, 4 po yun, kompleto na yan.
Okay. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
The next committee would be the Committee on Cultural Communities and Muslim Affairs, constituting 9 members, 4 of whom should belong to the minority. The chairperson will be, as already stated, chairperson will be Robin Hood C. Padilla. The members will be myself, Senator Marcos, Senator Bongo, Senator Mark Villar.
And the vice chairperson, I believe, is
The vice chairperson is also Senator Bongo.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
For the Committee on Culture and the Arts, constituting 9 members, 4 from the minority, will be the chairperson, Senator Legarda, followed by Senator Padilla, Pia Cayetano, and myself.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is carried.
Yes, and for the Committee on Electoral Reform and People's Participation, to be made up of 13 members, 6 from the minority. The chairperson is Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada. And the vice chair is Senator Go, Senator Camille Villar, another vice chair, Senator Padilla, Senator Loren Legarda, and myself. So that makes 6 from the minority.
And the vice chairman?
The vice chairman will be Senator Go, Senator Camille.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is carried.
Yes, and finally, this is incomplete, but for now, we would like to nominate for the minority for the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, Senator Mark Villar as chairperson, and as a member, Senator Legarda. We will be filling in for other members soon.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is carried. I believe we skipped the vice chairperson for the Committee on Civil Service. I think the designation is Senator Go.
Yes, vice chairperson is Senator Go as well.
So manifested.
Vice chair ka
Yes, we recognize Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Yes, Mr. President, may we likewise request that the minority, as soon as possible, designate their members of the minority in the Committee on Justice and Human Rights,
All
Mr.
right.
President. Thank you.
We request the minority to furnish the chairperson, their members for the Committee on Justice. Senator Erwin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to remind also the minority to submit the names for members for major committees, Mr. Chair, because what was mentioned earlier are minor committees headed by the minority senators. So may we ask if they can produce or they can give names for major committees this time? Mr. President.
Yeah, we appeal to our colleagues from the minority to furnish us the names of the committees that Senator Erwin chairs so that we can already have meaningful and productive hearings. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the flow of the events or the agenda today would be we're supposed to recognize the distinguished sponsor of the party list bill, Senator Ontiveros, and then Senator Lacson to interpolate. But I have some colleagues who wish to just do quick manifestations. We recognize Senator, our Deputy Majority Floor Leader, Senator Joel Villanueva.
We recognize our Deputy Majority Leader, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, to our Majority Leader.
Sorry, I have to, ano lang. Yeah, my apologies, Mr. President. I forgot to suspend consideration of sustansyang pagkain bill. Did I suspend it? Or
Parang
my
hindi pa
apologies?
yata. Anyways.
So who sent this to me? Somebody
Actually,
sent me a note.
Well,
Okay.
anyways, we'll any
I believe I suspended it already, Mr. President. My staff was a bit overzealous and probably thought that I did.
So,
May we recognize
so
Senator
the consideration of the bill is ready suspended.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader. Mr. President, this will be short. I would just like to rise to commemorate the National Youth Day today, Mr. President, in recognition of the vital role that the Filipino youth play in shaping the future of our nation. We are proud to have authored and co-sponsored the law that supports this celebration, Republic Act number 11913 or the National Youth Day Act in the 18th Congress. Ginoong Pangulo, mahalaga po ang kabataan dahil nasa kanilang mga kamay ang lakas, ang tapang at pag-asa na humuhubog po sa kinabukasan ng ating bayan. They are not merely the leaders of tomorrow. They are our partners in nation building today, and they are the owners of the future. Mr. President, there are approximately 31.6 million young Filipinos in our country today. Imagine po the possibilities if every one of them is given the guidance, the education, opportunities, and support they need to discover their potential and contribute meaningful to society. Ako po'y chairman, Mr. President, ng Kristiyanong Kabataan para sa Bayan Movement at marami po sa atin naging guest na ng KKB. And we have personally witnessed the passion, idealism, and capacity of our young people to make a difference. Kita at alam po natin ang lakas ng kabataan kapag sila po ay kumilos at nagsama-sama. We see it in our communities where young people volunteer and serve. We see it in our workplaces where they bring fresh ideas and new ways of doing things. We see it in sports where they're competing on home soil or on the international stage where they proudly carry the Philippine flag. We see it in our democracy where our young Filipinos increasingly make their voices heard and participate in shaping the society they want to live in. But while we celebrate what our youth can achieve, we must also Mr. President, recognize the challenges that stand in their way. In June 2026, the labor force participation rate among Filipinos aged 15 to 24 increased to 33.7% from 33% in June of 2025. However, Mr. President, youth employment rate declined to 86.5% from 90% in 2025. Of the 6.28 million employed young Filipinos, around 743,000 were underemployed, translating to a youth underemployment rate of 11.8%. Sa likod po ng bawat numero ay isang kabataan na may pangarap. Ginoong Pangulo, that is why we have also worked to sponsor and author laws that create real opportunities for our young people. This includes, and thanks to the help of our colleagues here in the Senate, yung pong Trabaho para sa Bayan Act, where we seek to strengthen the youth labor force participation by improving employability, expanding skills development through institutions such as TESDA, and strengthening programs that help young Filipinos make the difficult transition from school to work. Mr. President, this August chamber, this Senate also passed as we champion the First-Time Job Seekers Act, yung pong mga kagagraduate lamang na mga kabataan na libre lahat noong kanilang mga dokumento para makapag-apply for the first time ng trabaho, para po wala na po yung mga unnecessary barriers and expenses. We have championed various other laws that allow our youth to flourish. These include Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, which we all work hard for, Labor Education Act, Tulong Trabaho Law, and Doktor para sa Bayan Act. Mr. President, our responsibility is not simply to tell the youth to dream. Our responsibility is to also build a country where they have a fair chance to turn those dreams into reality. In closing, Mr. President, ang kinabukasan po ng ating bayan ay nakasalalay sa kung paano natin pinahahalagahan, ginagabayan, at binibigyan ng pagkakataon ng ating mga kabataan ngayon. And so, Mr. President, on this National Youth Day, let us send a clear message to every young Filipino. Nakikita po namin kayo. Naririnig po namin kayo. Naniniwala po kami sa kakayahan ninyong magtagumpay sa buhay. Today, we renew our commitment to give our young people not only our recognition, but more importantly, the opportunities, support, and trust that they deserve. Mabuhay po ang kabataang Pilipino. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, and may God bless us all.
Maraming salamat, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2090 under Committee Report number 57.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 2090 and under Committee Report number 57 is now in order.
We recognize the distinguished colleague, Senator Risa Ontiveros, to sponsor the measure and to interpolate the distinguished colleague, Senator Panfilo Tinglas.
We recognize the sponsor of the measure, Senator Risa Ontiveros, and to interpolate Senator Ping Lacson.
Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And will the distinguished sponsor or lady from Panay and I would like to say for Del Pilar
Yes, sir.
yield to some clarificatory questions?
Very gladly, Mr. President.
Thank you. I'll try to limit my interpellation to the legal framework of the measure under consideration. And so my first question is, will the distinguished sponsor educate this representation on the intent and purpose of the party list system as originally envisioned by the framers of the 1987 Constitution?
Yes, Mr. President. As originally envisioned by the framers of the 1987 Constitution, at ito po yung inulit nila at binigyang diin dun po sa ating hearings kamakailan ng Senate Committee on ba't ako nagme-mental block? On electoral reforms and people's participation ay na bigyan ng tiyak na espasyo sa ating gobyerno, partikular sa legislatura, partikular sa House of Representatives, ang mga political forces na hindi karaniwan nakakapasok sa ating political system. At dalawa po yung binigyan nila ng diin sa mga deliberations ng Constitutional Commission at ulit sa mga pagdinig ng Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms. At ito po ay una, yung mga partido na mayroong tiyak na filosofiya o ideolohiya at platform of governance. At pangalawa, na magsing importante o mahalaga ang dalawa, yung mga iba't ibang batayang sektor sa ating lipunan na kalimitan ay nabibilang sa marginalized and underrepresented na mga mamamayan dito sa Pilipinas,
Yes,
Mr.
yes,
President.
and to make them not merely as passive recipients of the state's benevolence, but active participants in the mainstream of representative democracy. No? Yun po yung original intent ng Constitutional Commission at that time. No?
Yun po, Mr. President, good gentleman mula sa Cavite, na sila dahil makikilahok, kakatawanin ng kanilang interes, mamumuno bilang mga nominado ng mga party list organizations, salamat, yun na nga, magiging aktibong nakikilahok. At hindi lamang sa ating sistemang pangpolitika, mas aktibo ring makikilahok sa pagpapaunlad at pakikinabang sa ating ekonomiya,
Yeah,
Mr.
maraming
President.
salamat po, distinguished sponsor. And doon sa deliberations ng Constitutional Commission, ano po yung original list ng sectors na in-include nila under the party list system? Yung pong original na sectors.
Yung original list po ng mga sektor, I'm double checking, Mr. President, dahil what I have here top of mind ay yung nasa panukalang batas natin, but meron nga pong nakabilang sa ating konstitusyon.
Tulong na lang po ako,
Nakasaad
labor,
sa ating konstitusyon.
peasant,
Yes, Mr.
urban poor,
President.
youth. No? Ito po yung talagang binigyan ng recognition. Ano? But ang sabi rin ng batas, ang sinasabi ng batas, eventually na naipasa, pwedeng isubdivide ito mga sektor na ito. Ibig sabihin, yung labor, pwede pang mas-subdivide into further, maybe parang related sectors no, ng labor. So labor, peasant, urban poor, youth. And then, sa legislation, may mga subsectors. At nadagdagan pa, ito yung indigenous cultural communities and women. So bali yun po yung original na sektor na na-envision ng mga constitutional commissioners sa pagbalangkas ng party system under the 1987 Constitution.
Tama po, Mr. President. At ito rin po ay ginamit na batayan in a way a first incarnation ng party list system dun sa pag-appoint nung presidente noon ng mga tinatawag na sectoral representatives sa Kongreso. Pero ang full fruition, implementation ay batay nga dito sa nakasaad sa konstitusyon at ngayon pinapanukala sa panukalang batas natin, dagdagan yung mga sektor na maaaring lumahok, particular dun sa sectoral party list organizations, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And yung 50-50 kasi ang sinasabi rin sa Constitution, parang nagreserba ng additional seats. Pero parang nasa transitory provision ng Constitution, particularly Article 18, Section 7. Ang sinasabi dito, until a law is passed, the President may fill by appointment from a list of nominees by the respective sectors the seats reserved for sectoral representation. Ito yung nasa paragraph 2, Section 5, Article 6 ng Constitution.
And finally, Mr. President, hinid or sinunod ng Kongreso ang utos dun sa konstitusyon at nung taong 1997 ay ipinasa po yung unang batas natin tungkol sa party list system na ngayon ay kinoconsider nating amyendahan.
7941 yata ito.
7941, Mr. President.
So my next question is, among the 63 or 64, how many party list representatives are there now in Congress, in the lower house?
Kasalukuyan, Mr. President. I'll get back to you right away on that.
I was listening to the interpellation of the pro tempore, Senate President pro tempore, Senator Tito Soto. 63, but ang record namin parang 64 na yata ngayon.
64 ang kino-contemplate po kahit nung bill natin, Mr. President.
But
Dahil
right now-
that would be 20% nung current strength ng House of
But
Representatives.
right now, there are 64.
64. I'll double check on that, Mr. President. Pero 64 din po yung base number na ginagamit namin dito sa ating panukala para i-demonstrate din kung paano mag-ooperate yung proposed formula sa pag-assign ng party list seats.
Tama po
Mr.
yun.
President.
Kasi pag-usapan din natin mamaya, importante yung number 64 or 63 kasi doon tayo magbabase when we compute yung ano magiging percentage, no? Ng party list kasi from original 2% dahil sa jurisprudence sa Supreme Court ruling umakyat na ito ng 20% ng total members of Congress, no? Hindi na sinusunod yung 2%.
At kahit kaya po nung una napakasimple at madali gamitin yung 2%, Mr. President, dahil nung sa unang kongreso na ipinatupad itong party list system law of 1997 ay talagang eksaktong 20% ng House ay makakaupo doon dahil they would need only 2% of all votes cast for the party list para maupo. Pero in the intervening decades na dumami po yung mga distrito sa House of Representatives, lumaki po yung base number, kaya lumaki na rin po yung what constitutes 20% of the House of Representatives. And ngayon po, sabihin ko na rin po habang maaga dito po sa ating interpellation, kino-contemplate din po nitong ating panukalang batas na kapag ka hindi whole numbers ang makukuha natin kapag hinati yung 20% of the House for party lists. Kung may butal po, yan po ay mapupunta para sa sectoral party list organizations, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dadako na tayo sa medyo mga controversial provisions. Ano? Number one, yung ban on losing candidates under Section 8 dito sa measure, it strictly prohibits any person who lost their bid for elective office. Ito po parang, sa tingin ko lang po, no, I'd like to get your opinion. Parang violation ito ng Equal Protection Clause and substantive due process because past electoral laws cannot be used as metric for a person's ability and qualification to serve. Not to mention yung SC ruling, Supreme Court ruling sa Albano versus Comelec, no? Where the Supreme Court decisively struck down this exact prohibition in RA 7941. So will we still pursue under SB 2090 itong provision?
Sabihin ko lang muna po, Mr. President, na ang rationale po ng bahaging ito ng Section 8, siguro alinsunod sa diwa ng kapag meron po isa sa atin na matalo sa eleksyon ay hindi pa po pwedeng ma-appoint sa isang appointive position for 1 year after that election, kaya rin po nandito ito. Pero advised by the good gentleman from Cavite at yung jurisprudence na sinite nila, this representation would be willing to consider a proposed amendment in the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President. I'm not really against it. No? In fact, I'll state that I'm in favor of this proposal or this provision. Kaya lang, baka masubject sa the same constitutional infirmity dahil sa existing jurisprudence. Of course, alam naman natin yung Supreme Court, minsan nagbabago rin ng kanilang ruling. So, we can try, kaya lang, baka mapahiyalan tayo na ma-struck down na naman, baka may madamay pang, of course, pwede namang yung this particular provision lang yung ma-struck down ng Supreme Court. The next provision is the anti-dynasty provision. No. Ang issue naman po dito, baka mag-suffer tayo sa tinatawag na one title, two subjects or one title, one subject na also violative of the one title, one subject provision under Article 6, Section 26 of the Constitution. Ang sinasabi doon, every bill passed by Congress shall embrace only one subject which shall be expressed in the title thereof. So baka kailangan i-cover ito ng separate legislative measure instead of inserting this provision in the party list or the amendment of the party list system.
Sa totoo po, Mr. President, meron nga po tayong isinusulong na isa pang panukala sa ngayon na pwedeng ituring na companion measure dito dahil kinikilala hindi lamang ng Kongreso pati ng executive sa LEDAC na mga electoral reform bills, priority electoral reform bills. And But I would like to work on this a little more with the good gentleman from Cavite. I feel strongly about this provision, Mr. President. Dahil on the one hand, pinapakita kahit dun po sa mga deliberations natin dun sa political dynasty bill na hindi po nakakatulong yung overwhelming influence ng mga dinastiya sa pag-develop ng mature na political democracy dito sa atin. And at the same time, nakita po natin sa nakaraang mga taon ng karanasan ng party list system na nagamit pong backdoor itong party list system ng mga political dynasties para pumasok at makakuha ng isa pang seat bukod dun sa dominance na na-exercise na po nila sa mga lokalidad nila. So, just to make of record, Mr. President, na I feel quite strongly about this provision dahil kung maipasa po natin ang panukalang ito at kung kasama po itong provision ito na banning dynasts in the party list system as nominees or representatives, ay mas mabibigyang daan yung original at yung mga dagdag na layunin natin sa party list system. But saying again, Mr. President, I would be willing to work with the good gentleman from Cavite kung meron po silang nais ipanukalang amyenda sa provision ito, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ang napansin ko lang dito sa susunod na discussion natin, parang hindi ito naka-align yung ibaba natin yung political, sasama natin yung political dynasty. Pero pag nag-compute tayo ng panibago, punta na tayo sa computation, and I'd like to be apprised sa basis ng inyong bagong formula as proposed. Saan po nanggaling itong formulation na ito?
Okay. Salamat po, Mr. President. So, para maghanda nung panukalang formula na ito dito sa ating panukalang batas, binalikan po namin halimbawa yung MUGA formula ng mga deliberations sa Kongreso bago natin nabuo yung kasalukuyang party list system law natin. And then, tiningnan po namin kung paano yung formula na ito ay pwedeng i-update para mas ma-achieve yung prinsipyo ng proportionality dito po sa party list system. If Mr. President and if the good gentleman from Cavite would allow, pwede po akong magpakita ng slides para lang yung 7 or 8 steps nung formula ay mas maging konkreto sa atin dahil mas graphic. So,
Sige po, Mr. President.
salamat, Mr. President. So, dito sa proposed revised party list system seat allocation. So, ang premise po ay ang House mayroong 64 na regular party list seats available. Dahil yun po ang 20% ng total House membership including the party list seats. So, yun po yung unang hakbang dito sa formula. I-determine yung available seats ayon sa Section 11. So sample only, no? Kasi maaring over the years mag-iba to. So sample po, halimbawa may 64 available seats po tayo, evenly po ihahati ito sa pagitan ng political at saka sectoral party list organizations. So sa total na 64 available seats, may 32 na reserve o 50% niyan reserved sa political party lists, 32 din, 50% din sa sectoral. At yun na nga po, ngayon pa lang, yung binanggit ko po kanina sa good gentleman from Cavite, kung yung bilang ng available seats ay hindi kayang hatiin ng pantay-pantay, yung butal ay reserved sa sectoral party list organizations din. Pangalawang hakbang dito sa formula, kailangang i-determine yung tinatawag na winning minimum percenters threshold, or for short, WMP. At ito ay WMP threshold sa parehong classification. WMP threshold sa political party list orgs, WMP threshold sa sectoral party list orgs. Ang formula dyan, simpleng 1 divided by 32, kasi 32 seats per classification, times 100. At dito lumalabas, hindi yung dating 2%, pero 3.125%. Ibig sabihin, ang isang organisasyon, kailangan makuha niya at least 3.125% ng mga botong ikinast sa kanyang classification para maging winning minimum percentaire o WMP. Pangatlong hakbang, itatalo po yung votes by classification, magkahiwalay. So dito sa 3A, ito po yung political party list organizations. Ibibilugin na lahat ng WMP, lahat ng nakakuha ng 3.125% or more ng mga botong ikinast para sa party list sa kanyang classification. So itutukoy yung mga nakakuha ng 3.125% or more sa political party list organizations. Gayon din, yung mga nasa sectoral party list organizations, lahat ng nakakuha ng 3.125% of votes cast for their classification or more. Pang-apat na step, dito na tayo papasok sa proportional allocation among WMPs. So dito, magkaiba na yung divisor. Bibilangin lahat ng votes cast para sa political party list organizations. Nasa sample na to ay 9.6 million votes. Doon naman po sa sectoral party lists, isusuma din lahat ng votes cast para sa sectoral na winning minimum percenters na party list groups, which in this sample ay 4 million votes. And then, gagawin po sa bawat WMP na political party list organization, yung kanyang nakuhang mga boto ay i-divide by 9.6 million votes. Yung sa sectoral WMP party list organizations, ang nakuha niyang mga boto ay i-divide naman by 4 million votes. At doon makukuha yung share o yung percentage nila sa bawat classification nila. So rounded down, makikita po natin ang seats na dapat makukuha ng bawat isa sa kanyang classification, at least up to this step. At dito makikita natin, sa step pa lang na to, hindi na makukuha yung 32 per classification. Dahil so far, sa mga na-divide so far, 30 seats lang ang maa-allocate sa political WMPs at 27 lamang sa mga sectoral WMPs. So bago natin i-cure yan, dako po tayo sa ikalimang hakbang na applying the seat caps. Dahil meron din po dito sa section 12, letter E, number 5, may seat caps po ang bawat classification. Yes, Mr. President.
Kanina nakita namin 11.
Yes po.
Mabuti na correct nyo na ginawa yung 10.
Yes
so
po.
hindi na ako mag-interject.
Okay po,
Sige,
Mr.
okay.
President. So dito po, lalabas na may seat cap pong ipinapanukala na 10 seats maximum sa mga political party list organizations, 3 seats maximum sa mga sectoral party list organizations. After natin i-cap yung seats na pwedeng makuha ng bawat winning political WMP at bawat winning sectoral WMP, kulang pa rin dun sa 32 each. 29 seats dun sa political WMPs at 26 seats sa sectoral WMP. So may tatlong kulang pang ma-allocate na seats sa political party list organizations, 6 pa ang hindi pa na-allocate sa sectoral party list organizations. Dito natin pupunuin sa hakbang 6. I-allocate natin ang remaining seats sa non-WMPs, 1 seat at a time by rank. So ibig sabihin, sa political party list organizations, may i-award pang 3 seats sa mga non-WMPs. Doon sa susunod na 3 nakarank 1, 2, 3 pagkatapos ng political WMPs. Gayon din sa sectoral party list organizations, yung 6 na non-WMP seats ay i-award din sa mga susunod na rank 1 to 6 at 1 seat each. So dadako po tayo, at least dito sa panukala natin at panukalang formula, sa ika-7 hakbang. Halos tapos na po. Final classification final allocation by classification, kung saan makikita po natin na sa political party list organizations na award po ang lahat ng 32 seats. At kung bibilangin natin, yan po ay 12 mga political party list organizations. Samantalang ang sectoral party list organizations na allocate din po ang buong 32 seats, at kung bibilangin din natin, ito ay 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 sectoral party list organizations. Interestingly, Mr. President, 50% more ng mga sectoral party list organizations than yung political party list organizations. So ang magiging final na resulta po kung maipasa natin ang panukala at kung ganito po ang maipapasa nating formula, ay sa huli, final result sa step 8, lahat ng 64 available party list seats ay na-allocate. 32 po sa mga political party list organizations, 32 para sa mga sectoral party list organizations, para mabuo po yung total na 64 seats o 20% po ng House of Representatives, Mr. President.
Thank you. Yung sa political parties, how many registered political parties are there in the country, both national and regional?
Opo. I'll get back to you on that ASAP, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Opo, para
Ang purpose po ng tanong ko, kasi ang proposal sa measure para maximum 10 seats yung political parties, ano?
Opo.
And maximum 3 seats lang sa sectoral.
Opo.
So ang inisip ko, parang nagkaroon na ng imbalance na madidipit na yung the very purpose of the party list system under the 1987 Constitution na underrepresented saka under deserved, di ba? Sectors. Kung maximum 10 ang kukunin sa mga political parties, registered COMELEC, hindi ba parang agabyado na yung sectoral representation?
I'm willing to discuss that more with the good gentleman from Cavite, Mr. President. Although ipo-point out ko po, at least dun sa proposed formula at yung simulation, actually ang lumalabas, mas maraming sectoral party lists, 50% more than the political party lists. Actually, ang mahahalal. Given na yung 3-seat cap ay baka kaya nang makuha ng mas maraming sectoral party list organizations sa ngayon. And that will, at least sa simulation, magre-resulta po siya na yun na nga, 18 sa kanilang mga partido ay makakapasok sa House kumpara halimbawa, at least sa simulation, sa 100 political party list organizations. Ang sense naman po ng pagbibigay ng 10-seat cap sa mga political party list organizations ay partly po yung ilan sa mga kasalukuyang at pwede nating i-anticipate na uusbong pa ng mga political party list organization ay meron sa kanila na mga multisectoral in themselves at maaring sa kasaysayan ng buhay nila bilang partido ay nagdesisyon na sige, manatili tayong multisectoral political organization. Samantala yung iba naman ay maaring nagdesisyon na maghati-hati tayo sa mga sectoral party list. So in sum, Mr. President, yung interest po sa political party list organizations ay yun ang pag-oorganisa at pagko-consolidate. Samantala yung pangunahing interest naman po dun sa sectoral party list organizations ay plurality po ng mga tinig ng mga sektor. At ayon po sa ating panukala, kailangan pipiliin ng partido aling classification nila gustong mag-compete at lumahok. In the same way na bawat isa sa ating mga botante, kailangan din nating pumili. Sa ating party list vote sa balota, boboto ba tayo ng isang political party list or boboto ba tayo sa isang sectoral party list, Mr. President?
Ang malaking problema po rito o concern, no, at the very least, sa mga ibang probinsya na may mga regional political parties, baka mag-encourage pa ito ng political dynasty. Kasi say in a small province with only one legislative district, pag nag-form sila ng political party list, no? So, para in-expand mo yung district representation, although isa lang ang district, pero there will be 2 or 3 or more representatives, no? Yung iba kasi naging party list representatives representing the regional political party. So para na-expand mo yung political dynasty in a small or relatively small province.
Actually, Mr. President, napaka-importante ng puntong yan na kasasabi lang ng good gentleman from Cavite at nagsimula na rin lumabas from other quarters yung
Yes.
ganyang concern, particularly about yung unintended result kaugnay ng paano natin naranasan, particularly yung mga regional party list. So again, I would be willing to work with the good gentleman from Cavite about a possible amendment to that,
Yeah,
Mr.
thank you
President.
for that response, Mr. President. Kasi meron tayong alam na talaga nagpuputap ng party list. Hindi pa ito political party, party list na sectoral, kuno. Para madagdagan kasi sobra yung membro ng pamilya kesa sa district. Maraming anak, pero isa lang ang district kasi maliit ang population, pero sufficient para makapag-elect ng party list representative. So there lies the danger, Mr. President, distinguished sponsor. So maybe during the period of amendments, baka pwedeng i-revisit natin ito and reconsider yung magiging imbalance, no? Baka maging yung party list, maging ang nagre-represent actually political parties na mga political families.
Yes, Mr. President, I would be very willing to consider such a proposed amendment from the good gentleman from Cavite for possible
Thank you,
acceptance.
distinguished sponsor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Of course, marami hong mga komento tungkol sa party list, and I'm sure you know because you also represented a very strong party list once upon a time. So the bill, ano po ang dinireforma po ng panukala natin?
Maraming salamat para sa tanong na yan, Mr. President. In large part, no, yung mga problema na nagpe-plague sa current party list system natin, pwedeng sumahin sa entrenched dynastic and corporate interests have been diluting sectoral representation and political representation for the marginalized and underrepresented and for more genuine political parties. Parang na-overtake na yung party list system ng ganitong mga interes. For example, Mr. President, in 2022, it was reported that the number of party lists tied to political clans or incumbent officials skyrocketed with 70 out of the 177, so almost 50%. 70 out of the 177 registered party lists in the 2022 elections featuring said political ties. Gayon din, merong mas updated pa, March 2026 report ng Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism na nadiskubre nila kalahati ng 64 party list representatives in the 20th Congress are members of active political clans, and 1/3 even have ties to government contractors, Mr. President. Kaya itong dalawang phenomena na hindi kinontemplate ng constitutional framers, hindi kinontemplate natin sa Kongreso na nag-overtake na sa party list system ay mayroong dedicated na mga provisions dito sa ating panukala, Mr. President.
So is it parang lumalabas po dun sa sinabi niyo, 50% comes from a dynastic families or dynastic setting, and then yung 30% merong some form of government contracts or government-related contracts.
Opo, Mr. President.
So 20% lang talaga yung natitirang
Yun na nga po.
true representation or true intention ng party list.
Yun na nga po, Mr. President, napaka-modest na nga ng percentage ng House na reserved sa party list system. Tapos kalahati pa nun at 1/3 pa nun ay kakainin pa ng mga dynasties, ng mga contractors na may sarili ng base ng kapangyarihan at yaman. So, frustrating the original intent of the Constitution at natin sa Kongreso sa pagpasa ng kasalukuyang batas,
Narinig
Mr.
ko
President.
kanina sa interpellation ni Senator Lacson na in order to reform itong 50% merong anti-dynasty provision, albeit I think there's a conversation whether it's violating the one subject rule, no, of the Constitution. But nevertheless, nakita ko yun rin yung isang intention para matanggal yung 50% na related sa dynasty. Yung 30%.
Yes, Mr. President. In both aspects, hindi po ito rider actually dahil legitimate restriction po siya on party list nominees at mag-a-apply po siya sa nominees at saka sa representatives and not to other elected officials outside the party list system.
So kung meron na siyang relative na elected official, hindi na siya pwede maging nominee.
Ganun po ang mangyayari. Kahit dito sa ating proposed proposed party list system law na to the second degree din of consanguinity and affinity, Mr. President.
And then how do we address itong 30% ng government contracts or nominees with some form of related government contracts? How do we address that in the bill?
Ganon din po, Mr. President, sa section, actually both yung hindi inaasahan na pagpasok ng mga dynasties at ng mga contractors sa party list system ay na ina-address po pareho sa section 9 ng bill on qualification of party list nominees. Section 9 provides all nominees, including those of the youth sector, shall not be qualified to become a party list nominee if the person A is related by affinity or consanguinity to the second degree to any incumbent elected local and national official, including a party list representative, and B has or has had a beneficial interest in or holds or has held contracts or subcontracts, whether as individual or as an incorporator, director, or officer, to supply the government or any of its divisions, subdivisions, or instrumentalities with goods and services, or to perform construction or other works in the last 10 years preceding the subject election, Mr. President.
Thank you for that answer. And marami tayong natutunan dito sa flood control issue. I think isa sa mga natutunan natin, kung hindi man nakapangalan sa kanila sarili, nakapangalan sa anak, nakapangalan sa asawa, nakapangalan sa pinsan, and yung government contracts, hindi diretso sa kanila pero nakapangalan naman sa relatives. And I think Senator Cheese filed a bill na kung meron kang mga relatives sa may government contract, hindi ka pwedeng sumali sa mga bidding for government contracts. The same when the time...
Yung ganyan, if I may, Mr. President, and yung ganyang practice po sa pagnenegosyo nila, parang nire-reproduce lang nila sa political system natin, pati sa party list system natin. So gusto natin pong maglagay, Mr. President, ng guardrails para hindi sila patuloy na makapasok sa party list system at masuportahan ang mga totoong stakeholders sa isang party list system na dun talaga lumago at makalahok at makaambag sa ating political system, Mr. President.
Correct. Thank you for that answer, Her Honor. Dito sa letter B, is the good sponsor open to extending the beneficial interest to relatives, also to mga anak nila, mga asawa nila, kung merong consanguinity to the second degree sa anti-dynasty provision nitong bill. Ang iniisip ko, we should also extend the same second degree consanguinity to government contracts, naman, so that yung temptation na tumakbo ka for party list and then mag-secure ng contracts and yet ipapasa mo lang sa mga relatives mo, mawawala yon. No? So at the proper time and with the permission of the good sponsor, isa-suggest ko na i-extend rin natin itong second degree to government contracts.
Good amendment po yan, Mr. President. Learning yung mga leksyon natin mula nga dun sa investigasyon sa flood control scandal at saka papayagan po yung amendment na iyan mag-enrich yung mga provisions ng bill natin sa isa't isa.
Correct. Because yun yung mga natutunan natin na si congressman, hindi man lang diretso doon, but yun na nga, no? Relatives niya or pinsan niya nandoon, it's the same. No? That's a workaround in divesting their businesses. So at the proper time, we'll make that amendment and recommendation.
Salamat para doon, Mr. President.
Yeah. I'll go to a topic that Senator Lacson opened up earlier and I also feel strongly. Gusto ko malaman, what is the rationale for having that 50-50 division of seats between the political party list and sectoral party list? Anong naging discussion and rational in that concept.
Ang naging rationale at saka discussion dyan, Mr. President, at kasama nga po yung mga resource persons natin nung hearings ng Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, kasama po mga constitutional framers, saka iba pang mga legal luminaries, ay para makamit talaga natin sa pamamagitan ng party list system yung dalawang magkasabay at magsing-halagang layunin ng party list system as contemplated by the Constitution at ipinangarap nung unang party list law. Both na umusbong yung mga party list organizations kung saan yung mga basic sectors as originally identified at habang dumami sila over the decades na magkaroon talaga ng espasyo sa ating lehislatura, sa House of Representatives para mailaban nila yung kanilang mga interes bilang isang basic sector sa loob din ng gobyerno o ng estado, particularly sa legislature. At yung pangalawang layunin na yung party list system ay maging espasyo para i-encourage talaga yung pag-usbong at paglawak, pag-consolidate ng mas maraming totoong partido politikal. Ibig sabihin mga partido na meron talagang distinct na filosofiya o ideolohiya of governance at meron din pong platform of governance, Mr. President.
Ang ating one of the most important concepts ng nating 1987 Constitution is social justice through representation. So, sang-ayon ako na yung sectoral groups, especially marginalized groups, na mabigyan sila ng spasyo at ng boses sa loob ng Kongreso dahil nga mahirap kalabanin yung mga well-entrenched political personalities in different parts of our country. And kung ikaw ay isang magsasaka, kung ikaw ay isang mangingisda at yung pangangailangan mo sa iyong sektor ay hindi nabibigyan ng boses, sang-ayon ako na itong mga marginalized groups ay mabigyan ng boses sa loob ng Kongreso para mabigyan natin ng solusyon at attention yung kanilang pangangailangan. On the other side, yung political party, alam nyo rin na dito sa ating bansa, malayo pa tayo dun sa ideal political party setup, no? Dahil nga just an example, madaling magpalit-palit, di ba? Kung sino ang dominant party, mabilis magpalit, kaya nga may mga partido na after election lumalaki, lumiliit.
Nasa ibang bansa, Mr. President, pinaparusahan yung ganyan.
Correct, no?
Pag iwan mo yung partido mo para sa iba, maganda pong umabot tayo sa ganyan na loyalty talaga sa partido habang buhay, halimbawa.
At ang ideology at philosophy ng mga political parties dito hindi rin klaro, no? Marami sa ating mga political parties are personality based. Nakikita
or
naman
electoral
natin
coalitions lamang, Mr.
or
President.
for convenience purposes, no? So in short, hindi pa tayo